Chapter 1464. There were 7 soul realms in the ideal palace, and each level should be more difficult than the last. After experiencing reincarnation, Han Fei felt that there shouldn't be anything more difficult than this soul realm. In fact, when Han Fei really entered the 7th soul realm, he didn't feel that it was very difficult, but he felt that this place was ridiculous. Lightning prison? As soon as he entered the 7th soul realm, Han Fei was shocked to find that this place was very similar to the lightning prison in the Baibei Royal City. However, the Baibei Royal City and the Thousand-Star City were separated by the Wall of Death. Could it be that these two places were connected through the lightning prison? Han Fei was stunned for a long time, feeling the bombardment of the lightning. In an instant, dozens of lightning bolts fell. The old turtle was also stunned for a moment. However, both of them soon realized what was going on. Han Fei said, "No, it can't be the lightning prison. When I entered the lightning prison, I was only at the Tao-seeking state. If it were a normal Tao-seeking state, it would be impossible for me to resist the bombardment of the lightning power. But in this ideal palace, I was only a peak-level hidden fisher. It was very easy for me to resist the lightning. This can only mean that the strength of this lightning is not strong." The old turtle said, "It's not that the lightning is not strong enough, but that your physique is too strong. Although you are now a soul, everything here is shaped according to the current you. So, your physique is still very strong here." Han Fei chuckled. "So what? Do you think this is the same place?" The old turtle said, "Not really. This is not the same place. However, I do know how this place came to be." Han Fei raised his eyebrows. "You also know how far this place came from?" The old turtle said, "Go forward and see how far you can go." The lightning prison, for Han Fei, was equivalent to a training field full of lightning. As long as he had enough time, Han Fei could live here forever. After a long time, his physique would be greatly improved. Having tried the power of the lightning prison, Han Fei began to run wildly in this lightning prison. Boom, 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 every second, dozens of lightning bolts bombarded Han Fei, causing electric arcs to surge on his body, and blue light appeared in his eyes. However, not only did these bombardments not slow down Han Fei, but they even made him run faster. In a short while, Han Fei had run thousands of kilometers away. When he was in the Thunder Prison, Han Fei's score was 3,000 kilometers. If he charged forward with all his might, he would be able to travel at least 5,000 miles to temper himself. At this moment, Han Fei finally understood why so many people failed in the Thunder Dungeon. It turned out that everything was a problem of physique. In the past, the 5th Glimmer had said, if Yang Nanshi could pass through the 6th level, then the 7th level would be a piece of cake for her. Han Fei didn't quite understand at that time. Now, he understood that this level of the soul realm was actually not that difficult for a body cultivator. After 1,500 kilometers, the void stone steel began to appear. Han Fei's name directly climbed to the 99th place. When he reached 2,000 kilometers, Han Fei's name soared to the 38th place. In other words, the short distance of 500 li was enough to stop most people. Perhaps there were quite a few people who walked the path of body refinement, but there were extremely few people who could truly succeed in body refinement. In other words, they thought that their physiques were already extremely strong, but they were just frogs in a well. When Han Fei rushed to 3,000 kilometers, he was already ranked 3rd on the list. This meant that in history, it wasn't as if there had never been a true body refining powerhouse. However, such people were very few. It was almost effortless. When Han Fei went 5,000 kilometers deep into the lightning, when part of the lightning had turned red and purple, Han Fei finally felt a slight discomfort in his body. At this time, Han Fei's ranking was already the 1st. The void stone steel's calculation was absolutely correct. Han Fei stood in the bombardment of lightning, his body floating on the surface of the sea. Wherever he went, there were lightning flashes and thunder all over the sky. At the same time, tens of millions of lightning chains burst out. When Han Fei stopped, he saw a small blue snake winding like a dragon. That was the spirit of the thunder vein, which Han Fei had seen before. However, This spirit of the Thunder Vein was holding a golden scroll in its mouth and flying towards Han Fei. When Han Fei was about a kilometer away from it, the spirit of the Thunder Vein loosened its mouth, turned around, and fled into the sea of lightning. Han Fei took the golden page and let the lightning bombard him calmly. He was a little distressed. These pages should be gone here, but what about the last golden page? Han Fei thought for a long time and closed his eyes to meditate. If the demon purification pot could give this golden page a message, he would at least know what it was. However, under Han Fei's perception, he only felt that the golden page in his body was rotating and closing together. As he stretched out his hand, the golden page appeared, but nothing appeared on the surface of the page. The old turtle said, "You're missing one?" Han Fei tried to create a golden page with the creation ability of the ideal palace. In the void, a bright light flashed, and the next second, it was shattered by the lightning. Han Fei was not in a hurry to go out, nor did he answer the old turtle's question. Instead, he asked, "Old Yuan, you said you know where this place came from." The old turtle said, "Yes, most of the places with lightning you've seen come from the same source, except for a few places because of the terrain and mineral deposits." Han Fei was curious. In this life, he had only seen such places of lightning in the Baibei royal city and here. Once, in the Age of Doom, when he and Shimin Linglan wandered outside, they found a sea of lightning in the outer sea. Ordinary people dared not approach it. Even though Shimin Linglan had become an explorer at that time, she still rushed out of that sea as if she were running away. The old turtle said, "This is actually not a big deal. Although I don't know what the Age of Doom is like, I can guess that the Great Path is missing. However, this emperor can guess that the Great Tao is missing, and the various techniques are impassable. The collapse of every great path means the loss of a heavenly path. The collapse of every great path means the loss of a heavenly path. If this heavenly path collapses, this path will be dark. The power that wants to supplement the heavenly path will form a sea of lightning. In the corner where the great path is missing, it bombards every day." Wait a minute. Are you saying that the Thunder Prison and the Thunder Soul Realm are both caused by the lack of great paths? The old turtle reminded him, "It's the lack of heavenly paths, not the great paths." Han Fei didn't care which great path was missing. He asked, "I'm just asking, what are the benefits?" The old turtle said, "There are benefits, but there are none. In fact, I wanted to say this in the Baibei royal city. The spirit of the Thunder Vein may be a benefit. Furthermore, it was possible that living beings could be born within the lightning. But that's in reality. Obviously, it's not possible here. If we can catch those creatures, they'll be extraordinary." Han Fei blinked. "What else?" The old turtle said, "The birth of these places of lightning is mostly related to some special wars. Therefore, in the depths of these places of lightning, there may be the corpses of experts left behind. However, it won't be easy to get them." Han Fei's eyes lit up. "Are there any here?" Han Fei didn't think it was the death of a venerable creature that could cause a land of thunder and lightning even after death, right? Could it be the king? Or even stronger? The old turtle said, "No matter what the benefits are, there are none here. This place was just an illusion. It was fake. So, it's impossible for what I said to exist. The one in the Baibei royal city, if you have a chance in the future, you can try it." Han Fei thought to himself, the old turtle must be hiding something. If it were so simple, the old turtle would have told him in the Baibei royal city. There was no need to wait until now. He was definitely hiding something from her, and it involved some secrets. Han Fei said, "Old Yuan, according to what you said, there are actually a lot of such places of lightning. That means that many great paths have collapsed. What exactly caused the great paths to collapse?" The old turtle snorted. "Don't play tricks. There are some things that you can't be involved in now. You don't need to get to the bottom of everything. Aren't you going to the Divine Palace? Why are you wasting time here?" Han Fei curled his lips and smiled. "I'm just taking an opportunity." Out of the seventh soul realm, Han Fei's ranking once again rose to the top. However, no one was watching outside the seventh soul realm. After all, ordinary people wouldn't come here at all. They couldn't go in, and there were no benefits. They couldn't even watch the show. Who would be willing to come? At this time, Han Fei stood at the entrance of the cave. With a thought, a golden page appeared in front of him. This was a hallucination he had created. Of course, Han Fei knew that it was fake. However, so what if it was fake? As long as he could make this book complete temporarily, even if the content was wrong, he could still find a way to restore it. As it turned out, the golden page that Han Fei imagined collapsed before any information appeared when it was melted into the other 6 pages. After trying many times in a row, Han Fei was puzzled. It shouldn't be. If I can't put it together into a real book, can I put it together into a fake one? The old turtle said, "Is there any place you haven't been to?" Han Fei was startled. Right? The Divine Temple of Creation. The 3rd chapter. The pit left in the Thousand-Star City was also a transition. It was soon over. End of this chapter. Chapter 1465. Speaking of which, even after Han Fei had left for a long time, no one had noticed that the void steel outside had changed. The 7 soul realms were arranged in a bow shape, and the creation temple was at the arrowhead position of the bow. Without anyone providing him with any information, Han Fei soon found a strangely shaped dragon boat hall. It could be said that this creation temple was the most special place in the ideal palace. It was said that this place had never been used. No matter who came here, nothing strange happened. Therefore, except for some busybodies who wanted to find out what was going on, not many people took it seriously. If Han Fei hadn't left last time, he would definitely have come to this creation temple to take a look. When he first saw this so-called creation temple, Han Fei was speechless. The shape of this ship was more like a dragon boat than that of the dragon boat in the level 3 fishery. Among them, the whole hall was more than 300 meters long, and from the bow to the stern, it was in the shape of a dragon body. The middle part of the hull rolled inward in an arc. When Han Fei came here, he saw that there were still some people groping around outside the hall. It seemed that in their opinion, such a maverick temple would always have some miracles. Countless people couldn't find the secret. Maybe the secret was hidden in an unknown corner. At the entrance of this hall, directly below the dragon head, there was a magnificent gate engraved with pictures of the sun, moon, and stars. In this pattern, Han Fei saw the solar era stone, and his eyelids twitched. In the star bead of the Thug Academy, he had seen this kind of solar era stone outside Xiaoxi's coffin. If this kind of solar era stone only played the role of recording time in calendars, would it be inlaid on the gate? In this era of cultivation, who would still care about calendars? Obviously, there was something else here. The solar era stone was just a way to record the calculation of time and calendars. How useful could it be? Was it really just a decoration here? Han Fei was very suspicious. This kind of solar era stone seemed to have its own unique significance. No matter what it played, he had to pay more attention to it. After a few more glances, Han Fei was about to walk into the creation temple like an ordinary person. However, maybe because Han Fei's appearance was too strange, a group of people shouted at him. "Brother, do you want a copy of the Divine Palace of Creation's secret deduction map? This is the accumulation of the wisdom of countless generations and millions of years. All that's left is to find the treasures of the Divine Temple of Creation. Wait a moment, brother. I have the Creation Temple's Trial and Error 100 treasure pouch." There were many conjectures about the Divine Temple of Creation. These are all methods that have been thought of by our predecessors. All kinds of wonderful ideas will definitely give you a burst of inspiration, brother. Someone said, "Brother, I have a puzzle of the underground palace. Do you want one?" Han Fei was lost for words. "Wait, why would I buy the leftovers?" The man hurriedly shook his head. "You can't say it like that. Behind every wonderful idea, it represented a person's painstaking research. It was someone who had spent a lot of effort to figure it out. Even if it's wrong, we might be able to find some inspiration from some details." Han Fei glanced at the half-foot-thick book in the man's hand and rolled his eyes. Not interested. However, although Han Fei refused, he had already stopped and said a few words to her. This made these people think that Han Fei was a greenhorn who had never been to the Divine Temple of Creation. As the saying went, pluck the feathers of a goose. Since you were targeted by these people, they wouldn't let you go if you didn't give them some money. Suddenly, someone grabbed Han Fei's arm. Someone even hugged Han Fei's thigh. Someone shouted, "Hey, you stole my wonderful idea. How can I let you go? If you don't give me 10 mid-quality soul crystals, I won't let you go." Someone shouted, "How can you do this? You've read the information and you still don't want to pay? How can there be such a free lunch in this world?" Around the divine temple of creation, many people seem to have gotten used to these people's tricks. Anyway, they felt that since they couldn't die in the divine temple of creation and could change their faces at will, they might as well shamelessly ask for money. As the saying went, shameless people are invincible. Although these people's tricks were very vulgar. However, every time they made a move, they could always get some money. If they were lucky, they could even get a lot of money. Of course, they didn't dare to do that when they encountered the children of the big clans. However, looking at Han Fei's clothes, he didn't look like he was from an aristocratic family. Han Fei was speechless. Fuck, aren't they just a bunch of scoundrels? They're forcing me to buy and sell. Swish. Before this group of people gathered around to extort money. With a flash of a knife, Han Fei slashed down and 3 people were chopped into pieces. Fuck, as soon as Han Fei made a move, many people cast surprised looks at him. In the ideal palace, this kind of intelligence gathering was all in gangs. Everyone was united for the purpose of getting money. These people were not rich. They were all people who couldn't find a way to make money. Therefore, when such a group of people united, it was both pitiful and hateful. As soon as Han Fei made a move, hundreds of people immediately surrounded him from all directions. Those people were also looking for targets and preparing to fool people. However, when they saw their brothers being chopped, they had to come and help no matter what. Otherwise, there would be no one to help him in the future when he needed help. Someone shouted, well done. You didn't pay for the things you bought and even attacked us? What do you think the ideal palace is?" Someone sneered. "If you're caught by us, there are many ways to annihilate your soul. Do you know that?" Someone shouted in a low voice, "Boy, if you don't take out 50 mid-quality soul crystals today, don't even think about leaving." Looking at this group of people talking, Han Fei shook his head slightly. There is a saying that a poor man's ambition is not stifled. But for a few soul crystals, you're shameless. Such behavior not only can't help you improve your realm, but it will also make it more difficult for you to find your own path in the future. The road is long, and you've done all the thankless things. Han Fei's words made some people a little confused. What kind of logic is this? Someone realized that something was wrong. So many people surrounded him, but Han Fei didn't panic at all? In the face of everyone's threats, this person dared to treat them with contempt? He must not be an ordinary person. Some people were already old foxes. They snorted coldly. Bullshit. The road is under my feet. As long as my heart doesn't change, the road will not change. Don't talk nonsense here. Brothers, beat him out. Swish, the void shook and knife light flashed. More than a dozen people in front of Han Fei were cut into pieces in an instant. All of them collapsed and flew out of the ideal palace. From beginning to end, no one saw how Han Fei did it. It wasn't because Han Fei had become stronger after entering the ideal palace because he had now reached the semi-venerable realm. In fact, Han Fei's current strength was only that of a peak-level hidden fisher, the same as when he was in the ideal palace. However, Han Fei's vision was different now, and so was his understanding of combat. In fact, any strong master would have a similar feeling. The ideal palace was not connected to the outside world, so Han Fei didn't need to hide anything and stepped straight into the divine temple of creation. Even after Han Fei entered, Han Fei's voice was still floating here. "If anyone makes trouble again, I'll kill your souls." Frightened by Han Fei's words, these people immediately panicked. Judging from Han Fei's means of killing dozens of people casually, this person was definitely a top strong master. If such a strong master said he could slaughter souls, they really didn't dare to doubt it. Fortunately, in the divine temple of creation, it was a completely different world. Outside, everyone could explore and try to find the secrets of the divine temple of creation. However, anyone with a brain wouldn't believe that the secret would be outside. After all, for thousands of years, the divine temple of creation had only been this big. Every inch of the building outside had probably been rummaged through. If there really was a secret, it would have been taken away long ago. Han Fei entered the main hall of the ship. As far as he could see, there were just ordinary gold, stone, and jade beads. Although these jewels were also shiny and looked shiny, they weren't dazzling enough for Han Fei. In the center of the divine temple of creation were 8 gold-inlaid jade pillars, which led straight to the dome. Above the dome, Han Fei saw 5 carved golden rings engraved on them. On the golden rings, there were 5 strange symbols. Among them, the 4th golden ring was the symbol on the solar calendar stone. The 2nd golden ring seemed to be related to the 5 elements. The 3rd golden ring was a bit like the lines of an array, but he didn't know it. It could be said that except for the solar calendar stone, Han Fei didn't know any of the others. When he saw this dome, Han Fei realized that something was wrong. Because this kind of pattern decoration was actually quite similar to the symbols on Xiaoxi's coffin. However, there weren't so many symbols and characters on Xiaoxi's coffin. This divine temple of creation should be like this after everyone came in. Han Fei lowered his head and looked at his feet, only to see that it was more like an unfolded sphere, engraved with ancient mountains and rivers. Han Fei's eyelids twitched. Something seemed to be wrong. The jade brick under his feet was engraved with a regional map, and there were 2 places that he was very familiar with, the 100,000 Mountains and the City of Justice. Yes, Han Fei would never mistake it. These floor tiles were laid one by one. The entire ground was a pattern composed of tens of thousands of small floor tiles. Not only were there a lot of floor tiles, but they were also messy, as if they needed to be pieced together. However, these palm-sized bricks were not connected seamlessly. Instead, they were blocky and hard to figure out, just like Picasso's transformation. Because of this, ordinary people didn't realize that they needed to be pieced together at all. They just thought they were mysterious. Although these floor tiles were quite exquisite, they were not the original drawings after all. Therefore, Han Fei felt very awkward at first glance. Sure enough, this is something left for me. Chapter 1466. In this era, no one was more familiar with the City of Justice and the 100,000 Mountains than him. After the Age of Doom, the 100,000 Mountains were separated, and the City of Justice was overturned by the tide. The mountains, rivers, and earth all changed. How could anyone remember the sea map from 100,000 years ago? Therefore, when Han Fei saw these maps, he knew why no one could put together the correct pattern from these countless small pieces. There were no less than tens of thousands of small pieces of the map here. If they were put together randomly, who knew how many spellings there would be? Moreover, these small floor tiles were not removed from a complete map. A brick was a brick. Any 2 small bricks placed next to each other would actually be quite harmonious. After all, each piece was a geography. God knows what's next to this brick? What's next to that brick? So that's how it is. Turns out that I've really put in a lot of effort. Han Fei flew up and lay in the air, parallel to the ground. Han Fei knew the map of the City of Justice and the 100,000 Mountains very well. When he practiced the heavenly void divine walking technique, which mountain didn't he fly over? It could be said that which mountain peak had which trees? What were the characteristics of those trees? He knew them very well. Not to mention the City of Justice. Back then, he asked the aristocratic families for the position of the city lord to Shimin Linglan and replanned the city so that the patrol team could be stationed. That map was drawn by him. How many towns were there around it? What were the names of the towns? What were the characteristics of the towns around them? He knew it all too well. At this moment, with a thought from Han Fei, tens of thousands of stone bricks flew up. At the same time, at least hundreds of stone bricks were moving. A moment later, a map with mountains, rivers, and landforms appeared. The difficulty of putting together these regional maps was the huge villages, sea maps, and mountains. Where should they be placed? However, at this time, Han Fei noticed a problem. Where did the reincarnation soul realm reincarnate? If those aristocratic families had also gone to the City of Justice and the 100,000 mountain range, then as long as they returned from reincarnation, they should be able to remember some of the geographical patterns. After all, in that era, regional maps would not be hidden or hidden. No one would have thought that in the future, there would be people who would use maps as tests. Han Fei thought, maybe it's because other people's memories are a bit blurred after reincarnation. Otherwise, the reincarnation cycle of others and his own reincarnation cycle were two different reincarnations. Of course, some people who went to samsara would also record down the things that happened inside and sell them. There were plenty of such informants. However, no one would pay special attention to this kind of news. After all, everyone who entered the cycle of reincarnation wanted to obtain something, not to remember what was inside. The story inside was, at best, just a story. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. When the last piece of stone was put together and all the stones were laid on the ground again, there was a buzzing sound as the stones all burst out with a greenish-yellow light. These rays of light kept hitting the dome. Han Fei looked up, only to see that on the dome, the 5 rings engraved with runes seemed to be alive, peeling off from the dome. When all the 5 rings were peeled off, above Han Fei's head, from the outside to the inside, 5 large golden rings of different thicknesses and widths appeared. On these rings, there were 5 different kinds of characters. Han Fei didn't care about it. He just took it and asked someone later. At this moment, the 5 rings, one wrapped around the other, were floating above the void. Suddenly, Han Fei felt that in Forge the Universe, the black bead that he accidentally obtained from the Zhang family's treasury was running around. Ha! Han Fei immediately released the black bead. This was not the first time that Han Fei had seen this situation. Some things would attract each other. As soon as the black bead appeared, it flew to the center of the 5 rings with a whoosh and floated in the middle. Crack, crack, crack. Suddenly, he saw that the smallest ring among the 5 rings began to rotate quickly with the black bead as the center. Crack, crack, crack. Immediately afterward, the second ring also began to rotate with the black bead as the center. Smacked. Han Fei slapped his thigh and exclaimed, "Armillary sphere?" Han Fei's eyes narrowed slightly. It was slightly different from the armillary sphere. Seeing this thing, Han Fei was at least sure of one thing. This thing was definitely an instrument for measuring the spherical coordinates of celestial bodies, or an instrument used to demonstrate astronomical phenomena. Han Fei's heart was pounding violently. In ancient times, this was one of the most primitive navigational instruments. Those rings actually represented various rings such as equatorial rings, ecliptic rings, meridian rings, etc. Generally, they were used to measure longitude coordinates, ground coordinates, and so on. However, as far as Han Fei knew, this kind of navigation instrument didn't have a ball in the middle. Besides, there were no messy coordinates on this navigation instrument, only messy symbols and characters. Crack, crack, crack. When this thing completely turned into a navigation instrument, Han Fei saw that at the intersection of its rings, there was a curved arrow-shaped symbol, which should represent the direction. The rings were rotating slightly, and as the arrow-shaped symbol returned to its position, the rotation suddenly stopped. In Han Fei's eyes, information emerged. Name: Nautical Panorama. Introduction: a special magic weapon forged from natural spiritual treasures. It has the magical ability to measure phenomena and uncover the mysteries of all things. The oceanic panorama will calculate the way and determine the direction according to your thoughts. This is a holy artifact in the world, comparable to a divine artifact, and can't be easily shown to others. It can only be used 3 times a day. If it is used more than 3 times, it will bring bad luck. Quality: human holy artifact, can grow. Spirit attached, none effect, point to the place you want to go. Recastable, unrefined. Note: the all creations represent luck, but also crisis. Gulp. Han Fei swallowed. Oh my god. This is fucking awesome. He had obtained a human saint artifact out of the blue? Moreover, this thing could grow? The Wanxiang Yi would point to wherever his heart was directed to. It's a bit similar to the mysterious golden curse compass. However, this is a fucking human holy artifact, probably the most awesome treasure in Han Fei's hands now. The old turtle also exclaimed, What a wonderful workmanship. I didn't expect that you could crack this rare treasure in the world in one try. Han Fei said warily, Humph, old Yuan, there are some things you shouldn't see. If you see it, I will erase it for you in the future. The old turtle's voice sank. Do you think I want to see it? At the very least, I can still tell you. Otherwise, if this empress were to watch silently, what could you do? Han Fei sneered. Don't be so arrogant. You should talk to me nicely now. By the way, do you know what this thing is? The old turtle pondered for a long time and said, based on my rich experience, this seems to be a nautical instrument. In our time, this thing was actually not rare. However, it was generally not spherical. Han Fei smiled. Is it fan-shaped? The old turtle said in surprise, how do you know? It's nonsense. Han Fei's heart did a flip. It seems that no matter how mysterious the world is, it still needs some scientific and technological elements. If his guess was right, the fan shape that the old turtle knew was an octant or a sextant. Of course, there was a world of difference between it and a normal octant or sextant. At most, it looked a little similar. For example, could this panorama move according to his mind? It was something that could not be explained by any subject. The old turtle said again, the text on the first ring should be the language of the myriad tribes, which is the common language of the myriad tribes. I haven't seen anyone on your side use it. Han Fei was taken aback. Do you know the other characters? The old turtle said, the second one is more like a mark of the laws of heaven and earth, which coincides with the 5 elements. I don't know what the specific characters are. The third ring is a spatial line, which is a spatial pattern. I don't know the other 2. Han Fei was slightly surprised. In this way, there were actually 4 kinds of characters. The language of the myriad tribes in the first ring. The inscription of the 5 elements in the second ring. The spatial line of the third ring. The solar calendar stone in the 4th ring. Only the 5th one was left, but he didn't know what it was. At this moment, Han Fei looked at this huge panorama, immediately reached out, and dropped a drop of essence blood on it. Han Fei felt that a large amount of essence blood was being sucked out of his body. With the strength of a semi-venerable and the power of a golden body, 80% of his essence blood was sucked out at once. This almost scared Han Fei out of his wits. In an instant, he stuffed all kinds of spiritual fruits into his mouth and began to crazily replenish his blood. Fortunately, this panorama didn't seem to be bloodthirsty. Or rather, it wasn't a weapon. Therefore, it didn't need a lot of essence blood to recognize its owner as a weapon. If he wasn't careful, he would be sucked to death. After about half an hour, when a palm-sized panorama appeared in Han Fei's hand, Han Fei grinned and asked, where should I go now? Crack, crack, cracked. The panorama quickly rotated twice. Then the arrow pointed in the direction of the door, meaning to go out. Han Fei had thought that there would be other secrets in this divine temple of creation. For example, were there any treasures that hadn't been discovered? However, this panorama asked him to go? It seemed that there were no other treasures here except for it. Han Fei immediately shrugged. A human holy artifact, a treasure comparable to a divine artifact, he had to believe it. When Han Fei walked out of this divine temple of creation, he found that a lot of people had gathered outside. It seemed that the people who had been beaten away by him just now were coming to pick a fight with him. The leader was a green-haired brawny man, who was looking at him fiercely. It's him, Master Green, it's this kid. Han Fei was in a good mood at this moment. Looking at this person, he smiled and said, why, do you want to take revenge on me? The brawny man sneered. I heard that someone killed my brother with a knife. Let me take a look and see who it is. Han Fei gently patted his waist, and the blood-drinking knife appeared out of thin air, looking at the green-haired brawny man with a faint smile. Hiss! As a result, the moment the blood-imbibing knife appeared, many intelligence personnel gasped in astonishment. Han Fei. It's Han Fei run. Around them, many people who were ready to watch the show howled and ran away when they heard it was Han Fei. This figure was now very famous in the Thousand-Star City. He was an existence that could challenge a venerable. Swoosh, the group of people began to flee wildly. Han Fei looked at Master Green and the group of intelligence agents and said coldly, "Whoever dares to take a step will be killed without mercy. If you want to die, try to move." Chapter 1467. Han Fei's void lines had already been released, and these people had already felt the threat of death. This was a real crisis of death. Besides, Han Fei had been rumored to be able to kill souls outside the ideal palace soul realm. How could these knowledgeable intelligence dealers not know this? Therefore, under Han Fei's threat, none of them dared to run. Han Fei said, "I only have 2 questions. As long as you answer these 2 questions, I can spare your lives." The green-haired brawny man and the group of intelligence dealers all bowed. "My lord, please ask. I will definitely tell you everything I know." Han Fei said, "First of all, tell me, where is the 5th soul realm?" These people were taken aback and looked at Han Fei in astonishment. Where is the 5th soul realm? Shouldn't you be asking yourself this question instead? Seeing these people's strange expressions, Han Fei immediately kicked the green-haired brawny man. "You tell me." The green-haired brawny man said aggrievedly, "My lord, this 5th soul realm was destroyed by your Thug Academy, right? Back then, your Thug Academy fought with the heavenly talents of the big clans and directly destroyed the 5th soul realm. After coming out, Luo Xiaobai went on a rampage and slaughtered countless people. Only you didn't come out?" Han Fei was stunned. So, at that time, the 5th soul realm had already disappeared? It was normal that he didn't come out. He was sent to the reincarnation cycle by Shimin Linglan, so of course he couldn't come out. However, he didn't expect that this directly led to the collapse of the 5th soul realm. Han Fei pondered for a moment and immediately said, "Let me ask you again, in the 6th soul realm, which world did you go to?" The green-haired brawny man said, "My lord, the 6th soul realm should be in the Age of Doom." "What is the specific time period?" "It varies from person to person. It seems to be random in those 20,000 years. Han Fei raised his eyebrows. "What do you mean?" An intelligence dealer said, "My lord, some people went to City of You, some went to the City of Justice, and some went to Black Rock City. According to the different information we collected from different people, many people went to different places and experienced different things." Someone added, "My lord, after entering the reincarnation cycle, many things will be forgotten. Even if part of it was remembered, it was difficult to remember everything. It's like a dream. You've experienced the dream, but you can't remember everything." When Han Fei heard that, he felt that something was wrong again. The dream was incomplete? Every great family had a soul-type artifact. If someone went to U City, then they should know the map of the creation shrine and know how to piece it together. As long as they went to the divine temple of creation first and saw the secret inside, they should know that as long as they went to reincarnation and found the map, they could completely piece together the floor of the divine temple of creation. Wait, suddenly, Han Fei seemed to understand. Han Fei's eyes lit up, and he immediately said, "Let me ask you, have there been any heavenly talents who have entered the cycle of reincarnation more than once?" Many of the intelligence dealers nodded in agreement. Someone said, "Someone has been there hundreds of times." Han Fei immediately understood. "I see. It wasn't that they didn't know the secret of the divine temple of creation, but after they entered samsara, some information in their minds was indeed blocked by the great Tao there. Even if they had a soul-type artifact, they couldn't remember everything. It was like how he couldn't remember the floating stone. Every time this word was on the tip of his tongue, he just couldn't remember it or say it. This was the time paradox caused by the later generations bringing the memories of the later generations into the long river of time." Han Fei grinned. "It seems that I'm lucky to have met a super strong master like the time dragon carp who can swim in time." Han Fei thought, "There's an explanation for the 5th soul realm. I can't enter the 6th soul realm. The secret of the divine temple of creation has been solved by me. In this ideal palace, I'm only missing a golden page." Han Fei shouted in a low voice, "Get out of here, all of you. Don't think too highly of yourself in the future. Want to become stronger? Then go to the vast sea and wander by yourself. Stay here? It's useless." Yes. Thank you for your advice, Master Han Fei." I'll take my leave. For a moment, these people felt as if a heavy burden had been lifted from their shoulders, and they fled in terror. Han Fei was the only one left. In a few steps, he stepped into a small forest. He stretched out his hand and the oceanic manifestation apparatus appeared in his hand. Han Fei asked, "Tell me, how do I get the last golden page?" Crack, crack, cracked. The oceanic manifestation apparatus began to spin rapidly. However, after only 7 or 8 revolutions, the pointer aimed at him. Yes, Han Fei didn't see it wrong. The oceanic manifestation apparatus was pointing at him. This meant that he didn't have to leave the reincarnation soul realm to collect the missing golden page. If this was the case, Han Fei understood that his previous idea was correct. In any case, it was a fact that the golden page was missing one. It was also a fact that he couldn't put it together. The only way he could use was to fabricate a golden page out of thin air. However, the actual effect proved that the original power of the ideal palace alone was not enough to create a golden page. Then he had to use his own power of the Great Path. The Jasper Stone Bridge had the magical ability to walk toward the future. As long as he could walk toward his other self, wouldn't the secret of this golden page be completely unraveled? Han Fei didn't know if he could activate the Tao seed in this ideal palace. However, after trying for a while, it didn't work. Han Fei smiled bitterly. It seemed that it was unrealistic to create that golden page in the ideal palace. Or maybe it was because his physical body was not here, so he couldn't completely touch his own great path. It didn't matter. Anyway, he had already obtained the 6 golden pages. In the future, he would have plenty of time to study how to find the last golden page. At this point, Han Fei was no longer interested in the ideal palace. Swish! In the ideal palace, the news that he had come in should have spread. After all, Han Fei's name was on the void steel again, so it was hard not to attract attention. However, Han Fei didn't panic. After going out, these people would no longer have memories of him. He wasn't afraid that they would spread the news of his arrival. What he was afraid of was that too many people going out would attract the attention of the outside world. Although the people inside couldn't spread the news to the outside world, this didn't prevent the people outside from speculating about what was inside. Therefore, when many people were leaving the ideal palace, Han Fei took the opportunity to leave. Outside the ideal palace, someone was confused. Why did I come out? Someone was puzzled. I feel strange. I planned to stay in there for a year, but only half a month has passed. Someone was also puzzled. I feel something is wrong. Many children of the big clans have come out. Fortunately, Han Fei didn't stay in the ideal palace for long enough. At most, he was gone for less than 2 hours. Therefore, at this moment, outside the ideal palace, there were only more people, but not too many. Han Fei sneered in his heart, quietly stretched out the void lines, and directly controlled a young man not far away from him. The young man waved at Han Fei and said, "Brother Wang, what a coincidence. You also came out?" Han Fei responded enthusiastically, "Hey, isn't this Brother Zhao? Are you going in or coming out this time?" "I just came out too. I'm going to the Sky Meditation Garden and the God's Memorial Tower for a few days." Han Fei nodded. "Oh really? Let's go together. I've been in there for 3 months, but my strength hasn't improved at all. It's really worrying." Han Fei acted like 2 good friends who hadn't seen each other for many years. The person controlled by Han Fei was also confused. He thought to himself, "Fuck, what the hell am I doing?" Han Fei unhurriedly controlled the fishing boat with the person controlled and flew in the direction of the God's Memorial Tower. Since robbing the Zhang family, his identity should have been almost exposed. These venerables had many tricks up their sleeves. How could they not even think of this? Even if it was Han Fei himself, he could guess who it was after a little elimination. First of all, it couldn't be someone from the Thousand-Star City. Otherwise, if they could steal it, they would have done it long ago. If it wasn't someone from the Thousand-Star City, it must be someone from the Thug Academy. In recent years, there had been a lot of big events, and they were all caused by these people. And excluding everyone, now there was only one person who was growing so fast that everyone felt that he was eager to become a king. That was Han Fei. Besides, it wasn't the first time that Han Fei wanted to rob the Zhang family. The difference was that last time he brought the thug sect patriarch, this time he came by himself. At this moment, the venerables of the Thousand-Star City only looked in two places. One was the Thousand-Star Proving Ground, because it was very likely to be the passage to the Divine Palace. The Chu men's eyes were mainly focused there. As for the others, their eyes were basically on the God's Memorial Tower, occasionally glancing at the Pure Sun Island. However, to be honest, no one believed that Han Fei would go there, because it was meaningless to go to the Pure Sun Island. At this moment, Han Fei secretly pinched his fingers and his heart sank. Sure enough, after falling out with them, it was not easy for him to come to the Thousand-Star City for a secret realm. However, the arrow was already on the bowstring and had to be shot. He was only one step away. Han Fei even felt that it wasn't a coincidence that he got this Wanxiang instrument. Was this Wanxiang instrument designed to help him find the way to the central holy city? Therefore, as long as he entered the God's Memorial Tower, Han Fei was confident that he could go straight to the Divine Palace. Half an hour later, Han Fei and the person being controlled were chatting about the open pattern of the Scattered Stars Island while talking nonsense, saying that this God's Memorial Tower was the most difficult of the 3 holy lands. Should I go somewhere else first? Although he didn't know who he was pretending to be, he had to pretend first. However, as soon as the two of them flew to the God's Memorial Tower, they were stopped by the patrol team. Like the Sky Meditation Garden and the Ideal Palace, there were also many people going in and out of the God's Memorial Tower. However, almost all the people here had been investigated. Since Han Fei entered the Ideal Palace, the God's Memorial Tower had been under martial law. The patrol team said, "Come on, report your name. We'll verify it." Han Fei controlled the person next to him and said angrily, "Wait, don't you know me? Eternal Life Island, Zhao family, Zhao Senka. I'm so handsome. Don't you know me?" Han Fei also roared, "That's right. We've been to this God's Memorial Tower dozens of times. I, Wang Dalu, am a frequent visitor." At this time, if Han Fei wanted to control others with the void lines, it would be easy for him to be discovered. While they were making a fuss here, a few kilometers away, at the entrance of the Ideal Palace, a figure quietly left. However, at the moment he left, the aura on his body fluctuated. Buzz, buzz, buzz. In an instant, the void trembled, and a strong master went straight to the Ideal Palace. At the moment when the void trembled, Han Fei grabbed a person on the island with the void lines and suddenly got up. The moment the person got up, he was directly pressed down by a very terrifying force. At this time, a cloud of black mist suddenly rose, and the power of the old turtle venerable burst out. In the void, a voice shouted in a low voice, "I've been waiting for you for a long time." Just when the old turtle controlled the person below to attack, a voice shouted from the void, "This place is forbidden." At the moment when this shout came out, a black shadow stepped thousands of kilometers away and came to the entrance of the God's Memorial Tower. The old turtle's black mist phantom had been squeezed to pieces at this moment. With a thought in Han Fei's mind, the twins merged into one and turned into a figure. Standing at the entrance of the God's Memorial Tower, he glanced at the sky. "Old thief, wait for me to come back." Chapter 1468. Han Fei was very confident that he could sneak into the God's Memorial Tower. Han Fei also had the power of a half-king, so he knew what the perception ability of that level was like. In fact, neither Zhao Sankong, who had been controlled just now, nor Wang Dalu, who was bragging his name, was Han Fei's real body. In fact, Han Fei was hiding in the fishing boat as a black mist. At the same time, Han Fei left the white mist in the Ideal Palace. In this way, even if the black mist was exposed, the white mist would have time to escape. Han Fei had never been to the God's Memorial Tower before. This time, Han Fei felt that he was qualified enough. As long as he passed this God's Memorial Tower, he could reach the Immortal Palace. As long as he inherited the source water in the Immortal Palace, he could even become a venerable without the help of half a drop of source water. When he became a venerable with the large amount of spiritual energy, demonic energy, and energy fruits in his body, he could quickly reach the level of a peak-level junior venerable. These plans quickly ran through Han Fei's mind. When Han Fei left the Scattered Stars Island, he knew that this time, he would definitely go back with the strength of a peak-level junior venerable. Han Fei's body flickered, and he appeared in the God's Memorial Tower. Perception really doesn't work. Huh? My strength is suppressed to the level of a law enforcer. Interesting. This is in my favor. As long as the big clans are not stupid, they shouldn't send people to kill me. In front of Han Fei was a huge platform square, about 1 kilometer in length and width. 1 kilometer away, there were stones floating in the air as a road, which people could walk on. From a distance, Han Fei saw some irregular patterns. These patterns? This was a weird shape like the Penrose stairs. Those floating stones, layer by layer, turned into this weird staircase in his naked eye. A kind of staircase that would never end, a kind of staircase that could be repeated countless times. And in Han Fei's eyes, except for this staircase, there was no other strange shape. When Han Fei saw the spiral staircase that shouldn't exist in the three-dimensional space, although he was a little surprised, he didn't panic at all. Previously, Han Fei planned to spend a lot of time to pass the God's Memorial Tower. But now, with the navigator, Han Fei knew that it would be a piece of cake to pass the God's Memorial Tower. His limit was that he could only use the myriad manifestations apparatus 3 times a day. Perhaps he would have to stay in the God's Memorial Tower for a few more days. On the huge square in front of him, Han Fei saw many old men sitting cross-legged on the edge of the stairs. The fish skin in their hands was flipping from time to time. These people seemed to want to exhaust their intelligence to figure out the problem with this unreasonable body. Han Fei immediately shook his head. This wasn't something from this dimension at all. Just like how explorers could enter the void, how could ordinary people enter? Not to mention entering, they couldn't even see through it. Ever since he learned the heavenly illusionary divine movement art, Han Fei could be half real and half illusionary, but this was still not the 4-dimensional space. The rotating stairs in front of him, on the other hand, were a kind of 4-dimensional space, enough to subvert a group of ordinary cultivators. If they couldn't see through this, they wouldn't be able to figure it out even if they spent a lifetime studying it. Fortunately, Han Fei's eyes were sharp enough to recognize it at once. The old men who were concentrating on their research didn't notice Han Fei's arrival at all. After all, people came to the God's Memorial Tower every day, and they didn't want to be distracted by a newcomer. Of course, a few people who were idle were looking at Han Fei with glowing eyes. Needless to say, these people were definitely intelligence dealers who specialized in buying and selling intelligence. As it happened, Han Fei wanted to buy some intelligence too. So, Han Fei waved at those people. Swish. Then he saw the few of them rushing over and fighting with each other. When they came to Han Fei, someone even pushed the person next to him aside and said telepathically, "I came here first. Don't steal my business." The person responded, "If there's business, let's do it together. It depends on who the customer wants to buy intelligence from." Someone said, "Brother, is this the first time you've come to the God's Memorial Tower? I only charge 100 high-quality pearls for the explanation of the basic rules. It's a free gift. The key is the route to the God's Memorial Tower. We have a total of 12,038 copies here. They can definitely meet your needs." Cough, cough. Han Fei slightly staggered. Fuck, more than 10,000 routes? Wait a minute. What the hell? Han Fei thought that it wouldn't take long for him to find the way to the God's Memorial Tower with the myriad manifestations apparatus. But it seemed that this tower wasn't easy to walk. If he really wanted to walk the same path as them, he would probably have to walk for a few months. Han Fei's eyelids slightly shivered. Okay, enough with the fancy stuff. Let me ask you first, why are there only the 3 of you here? The 3 of them looked at each other, and one of them said with a smile, "It's fine to tell you. Only those with the most intelligence resources can stand on the first floor to receive customers." One of them clicked his tongue and said, "Brother, to tell you the truth, I've been in the 3 Holy Lands since I was a child. No one knows the 3 Holy Lands better than us in the 1,000-star city." Han Fei was slightly stunned. Wang Santai. Wang Santai was stunned for a moment. You can even recognize him? Someone next to him sneered. Bullshit, you're the only one who talks about bullying the young. You're only in your 60s, and you've only been in the 3 Holy Lands for 50 years at most. I'm different. I'm Lu, 212 years old today, and I've been in the 3 Holy Lands for more than 200 years. Who doesn't know this? Who doesn't know? On the side, a wretched middle-aged man said, Brother, don't listen to them. How capable can Wang Santai and Lu Yi be? You can ask around. I'm Qin Guzi, 231 years old today. When I was 30 years old, I stopped working in the Sky Meditation Garden and the Ideal Palace. I've been staying in this God's Memorial Tower for 200 years. Han Fei's lips twitched. You've been here for 200 years? How about it? Have you found the way? Chen Guzi said, I haven't found the way, but I've walked 63,468 roads. The longest path I took was a passageway that didn't carry any weight 68 times. Han Fei was stunned. Just now, there were more than 10,000 roads. Now, a guy who has walked more than 60,000 roads popped up? Are you kidding me? Han Fei hurriedly said, No, tell me the rules of the God's Memorial Tower first. Each person has 100 high-quality pearls. We don't need that money. Han Fei waved his hand, and 300 high-quality pearls were placed in front of the 3 of them. Han Fei had no time to listen to the bragging of these 3 guys. What he needed to know was the basic rules. Instead of figuring it out by himself, he might as well listen to them explain it to him. Wang Santai immediately smiled obsequiously. Brother, you're so generous. From your actions, I can tell that you're definitely not a simple person. This time, you'll definitely make it. Han Fei interrupted, Get to the point. Wang Santai was slightly taken aback. Why does he sound like a person? But it doesn't matter. Rich people are all bosses. 100 high-quality pearls just to talk about the rules? Who wouldn't want to do such a good thing? Wang Santai said, Here's the thing. First of all, you can't attack each other in the God's Memorial Tower. Anyone who attacks will bring bad luck, and you can't destroy the floating stones. Someone once tried to destroy the floating stones, but guess what? He strayed into a dead end and never came out again. Han Fei said angrily, Get to the point. Forget it, Louis, right? Tell me. Han Fei had to give up on Wang Santai. Why do you talk like you're chatting? Look at me. Do I look like someone who likes to chat? Wang Santai was stunned, and Louis was slightly delighted. That's it. The reason why the God's Memorial Tower was the most difficult of the 3 sacred grounds was because every step on the levitating stone represented a possibility. The number of levitating stones in a scene represented the number of possibilities. For example, on the first floor, there were a total of 32 floating stones connected from end to end, which represented 32 possibilities. Every time you step on a floating stone, a channel will appear. This channel can lead to the next floor. And on the next floor, a new floating pattern will appear. Han Fei was slightly stunned and immediately asked, How many floors are there in total? Chen Guzi hurriedly interrupted, Brother, no one knows this better than me. Many people would jump to another path halfway through the journey. And those paths may just be a branch of another path. In other words, the paths are interconnected. If someone has to walk down a path completely and go to the deepest floor, hey, I can tell you clearly that the person who went the deepest reached the 98th floor. This? Han Fei immediately gasped. Damn, are you kidding me? This number was not a joke. The reason why he said so was that before the 98th floor, that person had already been to all the other 98th floors of the paths. And he was sure that they did not overlap. How many fucking billions of possibilities were there? 10 billion, 100 billion, a trillion? But Chen Guzi said, Brother, to tell you the truth, in this God's Memorial Tower, every floor forward is an earth-shattering event. Have you seen those old pedants? They have exhausted all methods and gathered human wisdom. Their research results are all in my data. This data only requires 10,000 caddies of spiritual spring. Do you think it's cheap? Chen Guzi was talking nicely at first, but when it came to money his eyes lit up, which made Han Fei's head spin. Immediately, Han Fei ignored him and looked at Wang Santai and Lu Yizhi. Is there anything you don't want to promote? Tell me something that makes sense. Don't tell me the method of advancing floor by floor. Don't tell me any more. I'm dizzy. Chinguzi's face stiffened. What's going on? I'm telling the truth. I have a compendium of advancing every floor here. Why don't you bargain with me? Chinguzi immediately said, Brother, we can consider 5,000 caddies. The two of them really don't have as much information as I do. Lu Yizhi squeezed Chinguzi and said, Brother, I have some news. But let's talk in private. Wang Santai looked at it and immediately became anxious. Brother, I have a guess. Chinguzi nodded. Brother, I know a lot more. The price is cheap and the most fair. When Han Fei heard Wang Santai said he had a guess, he thought to himself, this kid is really good at guessing. After all, every time I cooperate with him, I more or less gain something. However, I can't go to him now. I have to leave him for a while. Let's listen to what Lu Yizhi has to say first. First update. Asking for votes. End of this chapter. Chapter 1469. Han Fei had thought that the difficulty of the problem might lie in the special shape of those unconventional collection patterns. The Penrose stairs, Han Fei felt, couldn't be seen with the naked eye. Otherwise, anyone would be able to experience a higher dimensional world. At this moment, this bastard kept telling himself, this is a fucking map-pushing game. One levitating stone after another was pushed forward. Damn it, how long do I have to push this off? Even if someone spent thousands of years studying, he might not be able to deduce all the possibilities, right? Besides, Chinguzi just said that halfway through he might make a mistake and push it to another road. When the two roads are connected, you can't say that it's wrong. You still have to push it forward. Han Fei felt that this stupid method couldn't be tested one by one, right? Damn it, haven't they learned mathematics? Han Fei suddenly wondered why the ideal palace existed. There were many possible purposes. However, the most fundamental purpose was probably to let someone obtain this navigational multitude, right? And in this world, only two people could obtain this navigational multitude. One was himself, and the other was his sister. Because only the two of them could enter the real reincarnation. By chance, he happened to be one step ahead, so this navigational multitude could only be his. Only he could go to the central holy city. However, Han Fei was a little confused. It was impossible to deduce such a complicated God's memorial tower. Even if a deity were to come, they would also get lost if they traveled this way. Then, how did old Han, the thug patriarch, and Ren Tianfen get to the immortal palace? Did they go there through star beads? The danger of going there through star beads was countless times higher than going to the God's memorial tower. Besides, if star beads could go there, then they wouldn't have to go through so much trouble. They could just sneak into the immortal palace to cultivate. After all, the big clans could guard for a day or two, but could they guard for 10 years, 100 years, 1,000 years, or even 10,000 years? At this moment, Han Fei stepped on the soundproof array and raised his chin. Tell me, what news do you have? Seeing the speed at which Han Fei set up the array, Lu Yi was shocked. So fast. This person's strength must have reached at least the peak level of a law enforcer. This kind of guy who was going to transcend tribulation was very rich. Lu Yi immediately chuckled. This, brother. My information, do I have to pay a deposit or something? Han Fei smiled and waved his hand, and 10 caddies of spirit awakening fluid appeared in his hand. A caddy of spirit awakening fluid is worth 3,500 high-quality pearls on the Scattered Stars Island. Let's see how you answer. This. Lu Yizhang's saliva almost dropped down. He immediately said, I'll talk. Brother, let's talk about it. Can you? Han Fei casually threw half a kilogram of spirit awakening fluid over. Han Fei said, I don't care what method other people use to challenge the God's memorial tower. I only want to hear the kind of information that no one else knows, but is very valuable in the hands of intelligence dealers like you. The rest of the spirit awakening fluid is all yours. This scene made the eyelids of Wang Santai and Chinguzi, who were watching from outside the soundproof array, jump wildly. Is this person really so arrogant? Make a deal with spirit awakening fluid? Slurp. Knowing that he had met a big customer this time, Lu Yizhang hurriedly smiled obsequiously. I know, brother, you definitely won't be interested in this kind of unsophisticated method. I won't talk about this anymore. I'll tell you about the strange happenings in the God's Memorial Tower. Lu Yizhang said, I've never told this news to anyone. The God's Memorial Tower is guarded. Han Fei couldn't help but ask, how do you know that someone is guarding it? Lu Yizhang said, that was more than 200 years ago. Because there was a venerable realm powerhouse who was going to destroy this place. I don't know what method he used to bring his full strength in. In the end, what do you know? He only came in for less than 10 minutes, and then the heavens cried and he died. But that doesn't mean there is a strong master guarding it, does it? Lu Yizhang's eyes glanced at the spirit awakening fluid. Han Fei didn't care this time and threw another 2 caddies of spirit awakening fluid over. This guy continued, it is said that before the venerable died, he left 2 words, someone. Han Fei? What words? Lu Yizhang replied, someone. Han Fei sweated. Is there a sequel to this story? Lu Yizhang shook his head. Han Fei rolled his eyes. Not even a sequel? What are you trying to tell me out of the blue? Han Fei had already guessed that if there was really someone, it must be the controller of the Immortal Palace. He would just listen to a story. Anyway, he had only been out for a few days, and there was still a long way to go before the 1-year promise. Lu Yizhang said, I have another piece of news. I saw it with my own eyes. It was at least 10 caddies of spirit awakening fluid. Han Fei sneered. Say whatever you want. I'll decide how much it's worth. If you don't tell me, I'll find someone else. Lu Yizhang was stunned. He had never seen such a shameless man. He was so arrogant that he didn't even care about him. However, the spirit awakening fluid in his hands couldn't fly away. Lu Yizhang smiled obsequiously. Well, brother, I saw it with my own eyes. Speaking of which, one morning 7 years ago, I saw a white skeleton on the 15th floor of a certain path. With a swoosh, it disappeared. My road is top secret. So far, my news is already worth 10 caddies of spirit awakening fluid, writes. Han Fei paused for a moment and said after a while, do you have a sequel to your story? Lu Yizhang was surprised. Isn't this enough? This means that I have encountered a weird event. Maybe I'm on the right road. Han Fei curled his lips. Brother, forget it. I'll give you 1 caddy. You've tried your best to make up a story. I understand. Han Fei patted Lu Yizhang on the shoulder, removed the soundproof array, and then looked at Wang Santai. Come here. I heard that you have a guess. Lu Yizhang was stunned, looking at the 2 caddies of spirit awakening fluid floating in front of him, and then sighed. Indeed, every time I said this, others thought it was fake. But how could any of them know that they had really seen it? Han Fei was thinking, 7 years ago, it should be the Thug Patriarch. Why did the Thug Patriarch know the route? Without the nautical panorama, how could he find the way to the God's Memorial Tower? Even the old monster of the Chu family didn't know, but he did? How did the Thug Patriarch get to the Divine Palace? Did he also go up from the God's Memorial Tower? But no. Han Fei had always felt that the way the Thug Patriarch and the others entered the Divine Palace should be through the star beads in their hands. This was also the reason why these star beads couldn't be given to the 7 major sects and the big clans. Of course, this was also the reason why the big clans had been coveting and suppressing the Thug Academy. If the Thug Patriarch entered the Divine Palace from the God's Memorial Tower, what was the use of the nautical panorama? Han Fei didn't think the Thug Patriarch could get lost in billions of possibilities. Thinking of this, Han Fei frowned. The identity of the Thug Patriarch was not simple, but he had never investigated the origin of the Thug Academy. He would have to ask him about this in the future. Leaving Qin Guzi aside, Wang Santai got into Han Fei's soundproof array. Wang Santai said, Brother, I have a guess. Han Fei finally understood the characteristics of these people. In the past, he had only met Wang Santai who was like this, but today he met 3 of them at once. Han Fei said grumpily, Tell me the truth first, and then give me the money. As long as it makes sense, I'll get the money. Wang Santai said, Brother, as soon as I saw you, I felt close to you. From your question, I know that you are different from ordinary people. Get to the point. Wang Santi's eyelids twitched. Brother Han, this is not the first time we've done business. You can choose not to trust anyone, but can you not trust us? Han Fei's eyes flickered. Interesting. Are you sure it's me? Wang Santi's heart skipped a beat. Oh, Mom, is it really you? I was just testing you. Although many people had told him to get to the point, only Han Fei's style was different. He looked as if he was going to beat someone up in the next second. Han Fei was not in a hurry but said lightly, "It doesn't matter if you recognize me. As long as your intelligence is valuable enough, you will get enough compensation." Wang Santai immediately took a breath and said, "There must be a trick to this God's Memorial Tower. In the God's Memorial Tower, when there are many mysterious and weird patterns, it means that each floor here is a checkpoint, and there is no key to each floor." Han Fei's eyes lit up. "Continue." Wang Santai said, "I suspect that the secret to passing the God's Memorial Tower is either in the Sky Meditation Garden's Forbidden Soul Space or in the Ideal Palace." Han Fei couldn't help asking, "Why do you think so?" Wang Santai explained, "The checkpoints in the God's Memorial Tower are like the endless tower in the Sky Meditation Garden. As for the Ideal Palace, we can't remember what's inside. But it's similar. As long as we return to the Ideal Palace, it should be clear. Have you been to the Forbidden Soul Space?" Han Fei smiled. "That's a reasonable guess. However, I can't remember the situation in the Ideal Palace either. Doesn't it mean that I can't pass the God's Memorial Tower?" As he spoke, Han Fei turned the ring on his finger. In fact, when Han Fei left the Ideal Palace just now, he didn't feel that his memory was sealed. Was it the effect of the ring of time on his finger? Or was it because he refined the nautical globe? Anyway, he remembered it. In fact, this was reasonable. The existence of the Ideal Palace was always to explain something. If there was really no one, could he take out the memory inside? Then wouldn't he have forgotten about the navigational multitude instrument? Han Fei said, "Okay, that's more like it. Here's the spirit awakening fluid." With that said, Han Fei casually flipped his hand and took out 10 kilograms of spirit awakening fluid, which made Chinguzi and Lu Yizi's eyes widen. However, Wang Santai secretly took 10 kilograms of spirit awakening fluid and then said, "Well, Brother Han, actually, this is not what I want to say." Han Fei asked, "Huh?" Wang Santai suddenly said, "Brother Han, can you strengthen the soundproof array?" Seeing that Wang Santai suddenly became serious, Han Fei immediately said, "There is a forbidden array here." Han Fei said, "Go ahead. At this moment, no one will hear what you say." Wang Santi's eyes were fiery. "Brother Han, just give me half a kilogram of spirit awakening fluid later. When you start to act, I have to run away." Han Fei said, "Go ahead." Wang Santai said, "First, the God's Memorial Tower is not absolutely safe. Someone can break in by force. You must hide your trace and never expose yourself." Han Fei was shocked. "Are you kidding me? The God's Memorial Tower is not absolutely safe?" Han Fei said calmly, "Go on." Wang Santai said, "Help me. If I tell you this, I have to run away. Can you help me go to the Scattered Stars Island?" Han Fei narrowed his eyes slightly. "You can go to the Scattered Stars Island by yourself. At that time, you can say that I asked you to go there. Someone will believe you." Asking for votes. End of this chapter. Chapter 1470. Han Fei threw half a kilogram of spirit awakening fluid to Wang Santai, but Wang Santai pretended to be frustrated, as if he didn't get Han Fei's approval. Seeing that Chinguzi still wanted to rush towards him, Han Fei shouted, "All right, I don't need your information anymore. Disperse." After that, Han Fei went straight to the floating stone and said to the old turtle, "Old Yuan, what do you think? Do you think this place is safe?" The old turtle said, "Just now when that man said it was not safe, he did not seem to be lying. This empress swept through a few times just now and indeed felt that something was amiss." Han Fei narrowed his eyes. "Oh." The old tortoise said, "First of all, there are the old men who are doing research. Although their forms, auras, and communication methods are all different, they are all different from each other. However, this empress sensed the same aura from their bodies. I'm afraid that these people have been tampered with. Calmly looking at the floating stone in front of him, Han Fei continued to ask, "Anything else wrong?" The old turtle said, "If that kid hadn't mentioned it, I wouldn't have cared. The floating stones here seem to have been left with some kind of aura, which is extremely weak." Han Fei's eyes turned cold. "Tracking?" The old turtle said, "I don't think so. This place was sealed by an expert. Even if a half-step monarch could tamper with this place, it was just like the rules of this place. The further one went, the more possibilities there were. No one could leave a mark on every layer of levitating stone. Otherwise, wouldn't the skeleton from a few years ago have long been exposed?" Hearing this explanation, Han Fei was slightly relieved. That was the correct explanation. If the god's memorial tower had already been monitored, how could it have waited for him to arrive? It had probably been broken a long time ago. What Han Fei needed to confirm now was, how many floors would the mark be on? "Old Yuan, can you help me remember how many layers of that person's mark is spread? I really don't believe that someone could lay down hundreds of millions of seals just to trick people." For Han Fei now, he had to find the limit of the old schemer's mark first. Once he found his limit, he could casually walk down 7 or 8 floors. Regardless of whether it was correct or not, the old man would definitely not be able to find him. At that time, as long as he could temporarily avoid his sight and enter a deeper level, he wouldn't have to worry about being found by old Monster Chu. The old turtle said, "Actually, you can purify this power yourself. Don't forget, you have the apocalyptic divine art, which is especially good at dealing with these miscellaneous imprint remnants." Han Fei asked in surprise, "Can it be suppressed?" The old tortoise sneered. "It would be strange if you couldn't restrain yourself when you're covered in holy radiance. However, if you make a move now, I'm afraid that the other party will make the first move and gain the upper hand." Han Fei sneered. "I'm not that stupid. Come, let's try it out first." In Forge the Universe, the Myriad Manifestations instrument was running. Han Fei thought, "Tell me the direction." Crack, crack, cracked, the panorama rotated a few times, and the arrow was aimed in the direction of the floating stairs. As soon as Han Fei stepped onto the floating stone steps, he felt that the space around him was twisted, and he seemed to be able to crawl into this space. This should be what Wang Santai and the others were talking about. Every step was a path. Behind each step, there were countless paths. Han Fei didn't go into the void cave. There were 32 steps on this floor of the Penrose stairs. Han Fei took a step and paused for about 2 minutes. When he walked to the 12th step, in Forge the Universe, the Myriad Manifestations instrument stopped spinning and pointed at him. Han Fei chuckled in his heart. Others have countless choices, but he only has one choice on each floor. According to Chinguzi, the most powerful person could only reach the 98th floor. That meant that it would take him at most 33 days to surpass that person. Besides, the path he was taking was absolutely the right one. Han Fei only planned to use the Myriad Manifestations instrument 3 times a day. As for the side effect, he didn't want to experience it even once. However, he had already used the Myriad Manifestations instrument twice today. Plus this time, it happened to be the 3rd time. However, Han Fei didn't stop his pace. Although the Myriad Manifestations instrument couldn't be used, Han Fei could enter a deeper level and use it to confuse the one who left the mark. Han Fei climbed 12 steps and didn't enter the void cave until he reached the 21st step. The old tortoise said immediately, "Here, a mark has also been left." Han Fei glanced at it. On this floor, there were only 12 blocks, a typical Penrose triangle. Han Fei walked on this triangular floating stone. As it turned out, this geometric triangle was infinite and the road was endless. No matter how many times he walked, he would eventually return to the starting point. However, except for the 24 useless surfaces, each of the other surfaces would produce a space cave. In other words, there were 54 choices on this 2nd floor. Excluding the choice he made when he came here, it meant that there were a total of 53 choices on this 2nd floor. Han Fei returned to the first floor, chose another space cave, and crawled in. The result was the same, they were all triangles. Han Fei felt that his blood was freezing. This meant that every levitating stone on the first floor had 53 possible paths that were exactly the same for the user to choose from. If someone reached the third floor, they would probably be scratching their head. Damn it, is this something a human should do? Han Fei explored frantically. On the third floor, the old tortoise said, "There is a mark." On the fourth floor, the old tortoise said, "There is a mark." On the fifth floor, the old tortoise said, "There is a mark." In fact, when Han Fei jumped up and down in the cave randomly, it was not until he reached the sixth floor that the old tortoise said, "There is no mark here." He tried dozens of times in a row, even on the sixth floor, but didn't find any mark. Han Fei let out a long sigh of relief. However, then Han Fei's face became extremely ugly. Damn it, if I'm not mistaken, this damn God's Memorial Tower has been marked more than 600 million times. Han Fei had to admire this man's perseverance. How could he do such a thing? Did he bury so many marks just to ambush people? If he didn't pay attention and found the right way but didn't find these marks, he would be tracked on each floor until he passed. Outside the God's Memorial Tower, in the void shadow, someone shook his head slightly. Han Fei was walking randomly, without any pattern. However, he wouldn't let it go. Because Han Fei had walked out of the sixth floor several times and even walked to the eighth floor once. Unfortunately, those should just be Han Fei's probing, not the real route. This person was also slightly surprised. Did Han Fei not know what to do? Did the people of the Thug Academy really not know what to do? On the first day, Han Fei almost spent all his time walking and exploring. On the second day, Han Fei explored as far as the 12th floor. Fortunately, the mark under Han Fei's feet didn't disappear, otherwise the person in the void would have taken action. On the third day, Han Fei still wandered in the first 10 floors and finally returned to the first floor. On the fourth day, Han Fei cultivated on the first floor and activated the Yin-Yang Divine Eyes. After passing through various void caves nearly 10,000 times, he still returned to the first floor. By the fifth day, the person hidden in the void was almost losing confidence, thinking that Han Fei might not be able to find the way to the depths. But as a result, just at the end of the day, when Han Fei was on the fifth floor, he suddenly broke out. A terrifying and dazzling pillar of holy light enveloped the whole area. At that moment, Han Fei's figure rushed into a void cave and disappeared. In an instant, outside the God's Memorial Tower, in the void, a strong figure instantly descended. With a tough stance, he tried to take down Han Fei. He followed Han Fei and directly broke into the sixth floor, not slow at all. The seventh floor, the eighth floor, the mark on the fifth floor was purified by Han Fei, and Han Fei rushed all the way to the eighth floor. All of a sudden, a big hand instantly grabbed Han Fei. An old voice said, "Humph, Han Fei, you little brat. I told you, since you've fallen out with me, don't think about coming to my 1,000-star city in the future. Do you think that you'll be able to bluff your way out of this old man's hands with your little cleverness?" Han Fei, who was caught, didn't panic at all. Instead, he chuckled. "Old Monster Chew, it's really you. Unfortunately, today you're wrong." Han Fei's body collapsed in an instant and disappeared without a trace in an instant. This made Old Monster Chew's heart skip a beat. This person turned out to be a fake? And the real Han Fei was now standing on the correct 8th floor. When the Gemini became one, Han Fei took a deep breath. Fortunately, although they were in different spaces, the space did not affect the use of the Gemini divine technique. At this moment, Han Fei stretched out his hand, and the nautical panorama appeared in his hand. He stood still, and after more than 10 minutes, the corners of his mouth curled up slightly. Next floor. Han Fei had already calculated the time. He entered the 11th floor, stepped into a space cave on the 12th floor, and sat cross-legged. Han Fei thought to himself, if Old Monster Chew still has the ability to find me, then I'll be doomed. In fact, from the 5th floor to the 12th floor, although there were only 7 floors between them, there were billions of choices. Even if the gods were alive, If they walked this god's memorial tower according to the rules, they would probably cry. The old turtle said, "Don't worry. If I don't know the route, even I will get lost, let alone a mere half-king." Han Fei smiled gently. "I have to say that the big families are really difficult to deal with. If it weren't for Wang Santi's reminder, I would have almost fallen into their trap. In the future, the Chu sect will definitely be destroyed." The third chapter. Give me a monthly ticket? Moi? End of this chapter. Chapter 1471. On the 12th floor, Han Fei waited for a whole day. When Han Fei returned to the 11th floor, he didn't find the mark of a strong master. So, Han Fei quickly pointed out the entrance to the next 3 floors with the Universal Observatory. When Han Fei reached the 14th floor, no matter how strong Old Monster Chu was, it would be impossible for him to explore these hundreds of millions of paths at once. Speaking of which, Han Fei actually helped Old Monster Chu. After all, the first 5 floors that Han Fei walked through were absolutely correct paths. Logically speaking, just the path to the first 5 floors would have saved old eccentric Chu and the others hundreds of millions of choices. 2 months later, Han Fei had walked through the 212th floor in this god's memorial tower. Even so, this path still didn't end. It was conceivable that unless there was violent destruction or a divine artifact like the Universal Observatory, it was impossible for ordinary people to have such terrifying computing power to calculate the correct path. Han Fei couldn't help but complain. So many floors should be enough, right? If he went on like this, even if he had the Universal Observatory, he would almost collapse. What are these things in front of me? Penrose stairs, Penrose triangle, Mobius ring, Klein bottle. Perhaps these patterns weren't called like this. There were even some patterns that Han Fei couldn't name at all. Was this just a coincidence? Did Han Fei encounter these wonderful patterns by coincidence? On this day, after using the Universal Observatory, Han Fei walked to the 212th floor and stopped. In Han Fei's opinion, this thing didn't let him go. He didn't have the ability to go. Every day after using the Universal Observatory, he would sit down cross-legged, either to cultivate or to think. However, now he was already half a venerable and couldn't improve any further. If it weren't for the half-drop of source water in the Divine Palace, which could increase the possibility of his improvement, Han Fei could even become a venerable on the Scattered Stars Island. However, now Han Fei knew that the stronger he was, the more profound his foundation would be. After becoming a venerable, his strength would be completely different. Therefore, even if he had to suppress it, he would have to wait until he got that half-drop of source water. At this moment, Han Fei sat down cross-legged and took out a fish skin map in his hand. On the fish skin map, the numbers leading to the next floor of this god's memorial tower were recorded. After filling in the 3 numbers, Han Fei couldn't help but scratch his head and laugh at himself. I'm afraid this thing has no pattern at all. There is no connection between these numbers. The old tortoise said, "You are already quite good, you only need to remember these numbers." This further proves that the navigation instrument you obtained is extraordinary. It also means that you have a deep relationship with the so-called Immortal Palace. In fact, the only thing that puzzled Han Fei was that he went to the Zhang family to steal the 7th level of the true spirit fishing art. In the end, he accidentally stole an entire floor's worth of treasure. After stealing a layer of treasures, he inadvertently obtained this black pearl. Perhaps the Zhang family also didn't know what the black pearl was used for. Therefore, he had always put it on the shelf. In the end, he had benefited from it. From the beginning to the end, the Zhang clan had no idea what a great opportunity they had missed. Han Fei looked bored and lay on the floating stone. Suddenly, the old turtle said, "Han Fei, actually, these patterns are not completely meaningless. I think it's just that you haven't understood these powers yet." Han Fei tilted his head. "Do you understand?" The old turtle said leisurely, "None of these patterns are normal. However, in the void world, nothing is impossible. I didn't think so before. Have you noticed that these patterns are like some kind of array?" Han Fei chuckled. "Of course. As early as when I was on the 1st floor, I thought of this possibility. But what's the point of such an array? Is it used to create an infinite loop maze? Even if these patterns are combined with each other, it will only add a few more confusion points to the loop maze. If it is changed into a killing array, it will work. Han Fei talked with a smile. However, as he smiled, his face suddenly stiffened up. A killing array? If a killing array was circular and endless, there would be no loss of power, and the energy would only dissipate and be reused within a specified range. Then this killing array would be infinite. Hiss! Han Fei got up with a grunt. Assuming that it was feasible to use a killing array, then what he needed to consider now was, if he carved a single array, how could he trap people in it? The old turtle said, "What did you think of?" Han Fei said, "You have a point. These patterns may not be patterns. They may just be an array. It's just that this array has not been activated. Perhaps the entire God's Memorial Tower is a big killing array." Han Fei's eyes lit up. Logically speaking, perhaps this God's Memorial Tower was the only way to the central holy city. However, it might be the only bridge to protect the central holy city. If the God's Memorial Tower was a big array, then this array could definitely be called an earth-shattering one. Since ancient times, this array ranked first among the tens of thousands of arrays. Han Fei was stunned for a long time and then smiled bitterly. Even if this was indeed an array, how could he draw it? How long would it take to draw such a large-scale array? At this moment, Han Fei was a little amazed by the power of the Immortal Palace. If this God's Memorial Tower was really an array, then how strong would he be? Even if tens of millions of array masters set up arrays together according to a certain pattern, who knew how long it would take to set up such a huge array? He thought for a day, but to no avail. The next day, with a thought, the nautical panorama appeared in Han Fei's hand. As Han Fei chanted in his heart, after walking 15 steps along the floating stone, the pointer turned to him. Without hesitation, Han Fei crawled into the space crack that popped out next to him. However, as soon as he entered, the scene in front of him stunned him. In front of him was a road that had no end in sight. One could not see the end of this path, as if it was covered by a thin mist. The road was about 1 kilometer wide, and there seemed to be houses of various colors on both sides. The moment Han Fei appeared on this road, he saw the shallow fog on the road quickly began to dissipate. Han Fei's vision became clearer. In just a moment, the fog dissipated, and Han Fei seemed to see. At the end of his vision, there was a temple standing. Who? Han Fei immediately took a breath. Am I here? Han Fei looked back, only to see a tall tower that covered an area of nearly 100 meters and stood almost 1,000 meters high in the sky. On the body of the tower, there were uneven square stones scattered all over the place. Under the tower, there was a dark doorway. Therefore, the God's Memorial Tower had always been a name in the central holy city. Why did the outside world know the name God's Memorial Tower? God knew. Maybe they were used to calling it that. It was the first time that Han Fei had seen such a magnificent scene. There was no such wide road in the entire thousand-star city that led so far. Han Fei was not a fool. He didn't dare to move a step. After all, it was said that in this central holy city, there was a city protection array. The array was so powerful that it could even kill a venerable. Han Fei looked down at the ground. The bluish-white stones were glimmering and seemed to contain a lot of spiritual energy. However, there was no trace of an array. Han Fei was shocked. Is a brick in this central holy city so valuable? Han Fei asked, Old Yuan, can you feel the remnants of an array here? The old turtle immediately said, You may not believe it. I seem to be suppressed by the mysterious power in this city. I can't release my perception at all. Han Fei immediately gave it a try. In the end, it was just as the old tortoise had said. His own perception could not be released. In that case, was there a formation here or not? What kind of array was there? He couldn't feel it at all. Just when Han Fei was about to walk forward to see what was going on, the scene in front of his eyes suddenly changed. First, there was a thunderbolt that struck directly at his body. Han Fei's face changed slightly, but he didn't stop it. If this was just the power of lightning, it wouldn't be a difficult array to walk through. Boom. Boom. After 100 strikes in a row, Han Fei felt a scorching pain. Han Fei found that the power of this lightning was comparable to that of an ordinary minor lightning tribulation. This was much stronger than the lightning in the so-called thunder prison. If one had to compare them, they might even be stronger than the lightning prison 5,000 miles away from the White Shell Royal City. Of course, for Han Fei now, this lightning was nothing. However, after the lightning, there was a sea of fire. Han Fei could cross dozens of kilometers with a step. However, in this place, space seemed to be meaningless. He seemed to be trapped in an invisible array. There was no distance, no time, only nothingness. Fuck, did I run into the 8 trigrams alchemy furnace? The old turtle said, this array appeared too fast. Logically speaking, it was impossible. Even if you can't detect it, I can't be unaware of it. So, I thought it could wrap you up, but there is only one possibility. Han Fei scoffed. What time is it? Why are you still keeping me guessing? The old turtle said, this whole city is a big array. You are already in the array, so there is nowhere to escape. Han Fei gritted his teeth. Although I'm not afraid of fire, such a big array, Han Fei didn't continue. He suddenly remembered one thing. In the heavenly desolation city, the city that lasted on the sea for more than 200 years, if it relied solely on manpower, it would have been destroyed a long time ago. Human beings had strong masters, but the sea clans did have strong masters. At that time, the heavenly desolation city had a city protection array. Even at the last moment, the city protection array was broken with great difficulty. At this time, Han Fei thought of the heavenly desolation city. So, was the central holy city he was in called the Thousand-Star City? Did it have an independent name? Chapter 1472. Inexplicably, Han Fei was caught in a series of arrays. Because there was no concept of space here, Han Fei couldn't figure out how to break the arrays. Han Fei was even a little surprised. Who set up arrays like this? If you're going to set up an array, it should be a series of tightly linked arrays to lure people into the trap, right? Who the hell set up a killing array at the entrance? Unless, this intersection was not used as a passage at all, but only to kill those from the Thousand-Star City. The fire was roaring, but Han Fei didn't feel it at all. Because on Han Fei's shoulder, Little Black was swallowing almost all the fire energy. Did they want to burn Han Fei? It didn't seem possible at the moment. It seemed that the fire array was useless. In the next moment, a dense swarm of arrows that resembled a swarm of locusts appeared out of nowhere. They were darting at Han Fei. Fuck me. Is this how you jump between formations? Han Fei quickly put away Little Black, and with a thought, 2 kitchen knives appeared in his hands. Han Fei moved up and down in the waves like a snake. In the array of arrows that were as fast as lightning, he turned into endless shadows. Clang, 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 clang. After almost 100 minutes, Han Fei stepped on the defense array and slashed with Snowmorn in his hand. Sword Chi soared into the sky. The power of this slash was comparable to that of a peak-level junior venerable. After entering the central holy city, Han Fei's power returned. However, his perception seemed to be trapped by an array and couldn't get out for the time being. Han Fei activated the power of Tao and increased his strength to that of a venerable, trying to break the array by force. However, as soon as he slashed out with the sword-drawing technique, he saw a weird big mirror appear. The sword-drawing technique that Han Fei slashed out was slashed back intact. Shoot! Han Fei was shocked. Is this a spatial array? Han Fei didn't dare to hesitate. He slashed again, causing the void to shake and air waves to surge. Thousands of sword lights melted into the wind and slashed in all directions. Han Fei's expression changed slightly. An array that can change space, similar to the array in the God's Memorial Tower? Old Yuan, can't you release your perception at all? Without perception, I can't find the array base. Han Fei didn't dare to attack again. The more powerful his attack was, the more the enemy would send it back to him with a weird array. It wasn't that the formation was strong. However, his perception was sealed, and he couldn't find where the formation was. Otherwise, he wouldn't have allowed this killing formation to be activated. The old turtle said, "This emperor's perception has also been suppressed. It seems like this space is suppressed indiscriminately. Is there a problem with your entrance?" While Han Fei and the old turtle were having a heated discussion, a knife shadow with a 1,000-meter-long spiral came at them. Judging from the surging power of the blade, Han Fei knew that it was no less powerful than his sword-drawing technique. Han Fei thought to himself, "I can't be suppressed like this." His forceful methods were unable to break through, but the other party was able to break through? That didn't make sense. Immediately, Han Fei said in his heart, "Space folding." The reason why his sword-drawing technique had been sent back just now was because the principle was the same. It was a bit like the principle of reflection, but it was not. It was like folding a piece of paper in half, so the attack that was blasted out would return to the original point along the fold. And the space in front of Han Fei was like that piece of paper. Thanks to Han Fei's unique Dao, he could create something out of nothing in a small range and change his Dao unlimitedly. Otherwise, Han Fei wouldn't have been able to deal with such a spatial technique. When the knife light slashed back along the space, Han Fei heard someone exclaim, and the voice was very clear. "Who is it?" Han Fei's first reaction was that if there was someone here, it must be the controller of the Immortal Palace. Han Fei immediately shouted, "We're on the same side. Don't fight. Xiaozi asked me to come here. I've met the palace master. How about we cancel this array first?" Han Fei was wondering how to let this person know who he was and confirm his identity. How to tell him that he had no malicious intent. Han Fei was also wondering if he should take out the sea-quelling painting. However, swish, swish, swished, the grand void formation gradually calmed down. The black color turned into a faint white. Immediately afterward, it began to become transparent and then disappeared. Huh? Is it really that easy? While Han Fei was still wondering, he saw a figure standing 100 meters away from him outside the disappearing array. 3 seconds later, when the void array completely dissipated, smack. Damn it, Han Fei slapped his thigh angrily and cursed, "Great. It's fun, isn't it? I'm still a semi-venerable. The power of the array just now is enough to kill a venerable. How dare you attack me? Hey, no, Aldrin. You have to explain it to me this time. What the hell is going on? Why are you in the central holy city? Isn't this where the controller of the Immortal Palace stays?" Han Fei complained. However, as he complained, Han Fei found that something was wrong. When Han Fei saw Ren Tianfei's faint smile, he swallowed and asked in shock, "Are you the controller of the Immortal Palace?" Han Fei's face immediately turned awful. No one had ever investigated Ren Tianfei's background. Because Xiao Ci was ambushed, it could be said that the entire Thousand-Star City didn't necessarily know that there was a controller in the central holy city. Except for families like the Chu sect and the Chao family, other families didn't necessarily know the existence of the Immortal Palace. Even if there were people who knew about the so-called controller's identity, there were probably only a handful of people. Before, Han Fei thought that Ren Tianfei was a top expert in the Thousand-Star City. In the end, for some reason, he had conflicts with the big clans in the Thousand-Star City. Later, he was hunted by the big clans and hid in the sea area of the Heavenly Water Village in the Blue Sea Town to recover from his wounds. Later, this genius created his own body-refining technique, reached the peak again, and returned to the Thousand-Star City for revenge. Han Fei had thought that the story should be so simple. But later, the reason why Ren Tianfei was hunted was because he had been to the Immortal Palace? At that time, Han Fei even thought that Ren Tianfei was a heavenly talent. Only a real heavenly talent could stand out from hundreds of millions of people and go to the place that everyone wanted to go but couldn't. But now that he thought about it, it was hilarious, too hilarious. A venerable-level expert was beaten to death? He went to a small mantis shrimp cave in the Heavenly Water Village and ate a few mantis shrimps, and he thought he could save his life? How stupid could he be? How could he believe such absurd words? In fact, when Ren Tianfei and Old Han joined hands, Han Fei had already guessed it. However, he didn't think about it because he would rather be fooled. Now, Ren Tianfei had become the controller of the Immortal Palace. What else could he say? The entire Thousand Star City probably thought that Ren Tianfei and Old Han allied because the big clans in the Thousand Star City were powerful. That was why they allied and helped each other. However, his mother was the master of the Immortal Palace. How could Old Han and Ren Tianfei not know each other? If Old Han and Ren Tianfei knew each other a long time ago, then the indestructible body was actually their scheme from the beginning to the end, from Ren Tianfei to Old Han. They were all fucking liars. Hey, wait, Han Fei was thinking, why did I include the Thug Academy in this? Han Fei raised his eyelids, looked at Ren Tianfei, and gnashed his teeth. Who is the Thug Patriarch? If the controller was Ren Tianfei, then it was only natural that Ren Tianfei could go to the Immortal Palace. This God's Memorial Tower shouldn't be difficult for him either. However, why could the Thug Patriarch also go to the God's Memorial Tower? Ren Tianfei, Old Han, and the Thug Academy were all on the same path now. Now, Ren Tianfei's identity was basically revealed. Then what about the Thug Academy? The Thug Patriarch once dominated the Thousand Star City, and Old Bai often bragged about it to them. Now that he thought about it, it didn't seem right. The Thug Patriarch was hunted by the big clans because he had been to the Immortal Palace. The reason was the same as Ren Tianfei's. What if he believed it? Then there must be something wrong with his IQ. The corners of Ren Tianfei's mouth curled up slightly. Are you curious? Do you think everyone has lied to you? Han Fei curled his lips. But, am I wrong? Since you all have such powerful backgrounds, why don't you just open the way for me and let me go directly to the Immortal Palace? Didn't you open the way for me? Ren Tianfei sneered. Who opened the way for you? From the beginning of your cultivation, from the fishing trial, to entering the Thug Academy, to the Level 3 fishery, to the Scattered Stars Island. During this period, who opened the way for you? With his hands behind his back, Ren Tianfei walked on this broad road. Even if it was for the sea-quelling painting, did I help you get it? It's only in the Thousand Star City that will save you. Your father and I helped you, but that's because the power was beyond your ability. Otherwise, who do you think would have helped you? Han Fei gritted his teeth. It made sense. When Xia Shaochan was taken away by Chun Huangdian, none of these bastards helped. Even when he was killed by Chun Huangdian on the spot, old Jiang couldn't find him after searching for days and nights. But these bastards still didn't help. Immediately, Han Fei's heart trembled a little. Just because of the road to becoming a king? He thought that after he took over the Scattered Stars Island and presided over the first battle, he would become a chess player from then on. But now it seemed that this was not the case at all. Ren Tianfei said, "Don't think about that. From now on, my identity has been revealed. The rest of the road is up to you. Don't you want to know who Immortal Li is? Come on, let me tell you." Chapter 1473. It was the first time that Han Fei and Ren Tianfei had met. It could be said that he had never seen a real person before. It was either a clone or a puppet. This should be the real body without a doubt. If Ren Tianfei was the controller, then his strength couldn't be weak. At least in the central holy city, he had to be strong enough. Besides, here, he didn't need to hide his strength. Han Fei stepped to Ren Tianfei's side. The two walked on this long street a few meters apart. Han Fei glanced at the buildings on both sides of the road that should have been dusty for a long time but were still brand new, and wondered, no one lives here, right? As soon as Han Fei said so, he saw a door on the side of the road not far away, which opened from the inside. Han Fei cursed in his heart. How many tens of thousands of years has it been? Are there still people living in the central holy city? However, when Han Fei saw the appearance of the person inside, he was shocked again. Isn't that Ren Tianfei? He scanned the person with his perception and found that the person was actually an explorer. Before Han Fei spoke, Ren Tianfei said, "This city is so big that someone has to live here. I can't live here alone. After all, I can't have endless clones." Han Fei couldn't help asking, "Then how many clones do you have?" Han Fei felt that this should be Ren Tianfei's path. Otherwise, he had never seen a venerable using a clone to fight all the time. Ren Tianfei said, "It's okay if you want 100, 1,000, or even 10,000 of them. It's just that the power of different clones is different. It depends on when and how to use it. Han Fei asked, "Path?" Ren Tianfen grunted and said, "If it were a combat skill, I would have found a way to give it to you long ago." Han Fei rolled his eyes and then looked around. "Is this the central holy city? What's so special about it?" Ren Tianfen smiled. "Let's go up and have a look." With a shout from Ren Tianfen, the two stepped into the air one after another. When they came to a height of thousands of meters, the layout of the city had already taken shape. However, at this moment, he still couldn't see the entire appearance of the city. Further up, Han Fei saw a winding river in the shape of an S, running through the entire central holy city. On both sides of the river, on both sides of the middle line, there were two completely different architectural styles. Black and white. Han Fei was a little dumbfounded. "Tai Chi?" Ren Tianfei asked, "What is Tai Chi?" "This is yin and yang." Old Man Ren blew his beard and said proudly, "The central holy city uses the inner square as the stars to nourish the fire energy of the mortal world. With Tianshui as the Milky Way, he placed two palaces in the city. With the divine temple as the Big Dipper, the yin and yang of the world converged. On the axis of the heaven character, the world's strongest sects were built. They were the Lunar Academy, the Pure Yang Taoist Palace. These were the former Thousand Star City, the former Yin-Yang Heaven." This? Han Fei was a little stunned. Old Man Ren, say something? "I can understand." Ren Tianfei snorted. "A city has to be inhabited. If there were people living here, there would be people. If there was popularity, there would be governance, and there would be the birth of the power of will. You must have felt it when you fought on the Scattered Stars Island, right?" Han Fei nodded. "So, the central holy city was built to provide the power of will for the king?" Ren Tianfei shook his head. "Of course not. Under the rule of the king, there are billions of people. Those who can live in the central holy city are all extraordinary. How can everyone live here? This is just the backbone of the yin-yang heaven, which represents the level of power." Han Fei didn't dwell on this question but looked at the river and asked, "What about the river?" Ren Tianfei explained, "The clouds and rain form a river, and the spirit awakening fluid flows in the river. It can be called the Milky Way or the spiritual river. As for the specific name, it doesn't matter. The spirit awakening fluid flows in it?" Han Fei couldn't help but gasp. "Are you kidding me? How much spirit awakening fluid does it cost?" Ren Tianfei sneered. "What do you think the spirit awakening fluid is? It is nourished by the Tao of the king and contains the enlightenment of the king. Everything can be awakened by the king's aura. Forget it, you won't understand it even if I tell you. Anyway, all you need to know is that the spirit awakening fluid is not valuable. Once you become a king, you can have as much as you want." Han Fei asked, "Then what's the matter with the yin-yang diagram? The Lunar Academy and the Pure Yang sect are the two strongest sects in the world on the axis. Why don't the 7 major sects in the Thousand Star City have them?" Suddenly, Han Fei tilted his head and looked at Ren Tianfei. "Is the Thug Academy the Lunar Academy or the Pure Yang sect?" Ren Tianfei looked at Han Fei with a smile. "Are you so sure that the Thug Academy is one of the 2 major academies?" Han Fei curled his lips. "If not, how could the patriarch of the Thug Academy pass the God's Memorial Tower? Why could he enter the Divine Palace?" Han Fei sneered again. "I used to wonder why the Thug Academy somehow became the top of the 8 major academies in the Thousand Star City and was popular for a while. The Pure Yang Island, the Thug Academy, the Pure Yang sect. It turns out that this is the real origin of the Thug Academy." Ren Tianfei said casually, "You're quite smart. Yes, the predecessor of the Thug Academy was indeed the Pure Yang sect. It used to be a revolution for thousands of years. In the end, the experts of the sect withered. The remaining people could only leave the central holy city and start recruiting like the 7 major sections." Han Fei couldn't help but wonder, "Isn't this how you recruited people before?" Ren Tianfei glanced at Han Fei with a faint smile and asked, "Is this how you recruited people?" Han Fei thought for a moment. That didn't seem right. Although they left the central holy city, the arrogance of the Thug Academy didn't diminish. For example, Lu Renquang, Zhang Xuanyu, Luo Xiaobai, Xia Xiaochun. Which one of them was recruited? Only Chu Jinan and Ling Yuan were recruited from Chu Jinan's generation. Han Fei couldn't help but ask, what about the Lunar Academy? Ren Tianfei said indifferently, you should know that the Yin-Yang heaven was moved here later. At that time, the people of the central holy city followed the army and then scattered everywhere, never returning. The Lunar Academy was separated from the Yin-Yang heaven at that time. Where exactly is it? I don't know. Han Fei took a slight breath. In other words, the Lunar Academy had disappeared for tens of thousands of years? This was understandable. After all, during the Age of Doom, there were indeed battles everywhere. Some people disappeared in the middle of the war. This should be normal. Besides, after the establishment of the 36 immortal palaces, there must have been many battles. Where were these people left? Did they still remember the Yin-Yang heaven? It was the same question. Looking at the city occupied only by Ren Tianfei's clone, Han Fei thought to himself, how many years has this old guy lived? Han Fei shrugged and said casually, so, what should I do now? Should I go to the temple or go directly to the immortal palace? Ren Tianfei smiled faintly. You can't go anywhere. Even if I'm blessed with great luck, I have to experience it in person. I'd like to see if you are qualified to enter the immortal palace. Han Fei immediately bared his teeth and said angrily, old man, you still want to fight me? Why don't you save your strength to fight the puppets in the immortal palace? I heard that there are puppets everywhere in the immortal palace. Ren Tianfei sneered. You have more than 80% of the good things in the world. I have to make it more difficult for you, right? Are you going to fight me or not? If you beat me, you can go to the immortal palace. Han Fei sneered. Do you think I'm afraid of you? You have an indestructible body, but I have also cultivated a golden body. I'd like to see how you can stop me in the same realm. Ren Tianfei's eyelids twitched slightly. Indestructible golden body. Not bad. Who said I would fight you in the same realm? Han Fei? Ren Tianfei released his aura and unleashed the power of a mid-level venerable. Han Fei was shocked. Didn't Xiao Xi say that the power of the controller had dropped a lot? She said that he was at least a beginner venerable, but, besides, Ren Tianfei was only a mid-level venerable. Could he be trusted? Anyway, Han Fei absolutely didn't believe it. Even if Ren Tianfei was a mid-level venerable, he was still a mid-level venerable who could break into the Thousand-Star City on his own. What was the difference between him and a half-king? Han Fei's face immediately turned dark. Hey, Aldrin, let's talk nicely. Don't bully me like this. I haven't become a venerable yet, and you want to play with me like this? You're bullying me. Ren Tianfei chuckled. The strength you showed in the battle on the Scattered Stars Island was not weak at all. Facing an advanced venerable? Half-King realm experts didn't give way at all. What? You want to admit defeat before the fight? Bullshit. Even a half-venerable has its limit. You always summon a mid-level venerable and then an advanced venerable. Who do you think you're bullying? Ren Tianfei suggested, why don't you go to the temple and feel the power of the future throne? Maybe you'll have the motivation to defeat me. Han Fei had never been provoked like this before. He immediately shouted, come on, let's fight now. I don't believe you can defeat me. You're just a mid-level venerable. Do you think you can beat me? Bam! Han Fei punched out. The invincible fist mark hit the void. The two of them fought in the void one after the other. Chapter 1474. The battle between Han Fei and Ren Tianfen was simply a feast full of violent aesthetics. At first, when the two of them first fought, Han Fei habitually dodged with all kinds of techniques. He used the desolate god body and the various body techniques of the 64-dimensional fish dragon dance. The reason why he fought like this was that Han Fei was still a little traumatized. After all, Ren Tianfen had specially trained him for 2 months. At that time, he was still in the level 3 fishery and was beaten miserably every day. Therefore, knowing Ren Tianfen's style, he certainly wouldn't let him find any flaws. Otherwise, it would not be easy for him to turn the tables when the punches came one after another without any chance to catch his breath. However, after Han Fei used all these methods, Ren Tianfei's strength suddenly rose to the advanced venerable realm with a swish. Han Fei immediately cursed, "Shameless old man, you're cheating." Ren Tianfen's voice was like thunder. "I'm cheating? I just want to teach you one thing, and that is, a single person can defeat 10 people. So many fancy tricks. When you meet a real expert, are you going to rely on these tricks to fight?" Han Fei sneered. "Old man, I not only have these tricks, but also the strongest body. Come on." With a thought, Han Fei activated the Great Way, increased his strength by 3 times, and suddenly jumped to the level of a junior venerable. Although there was still a gap between him and Ren Tianfen, he had the indestructible golden body, so he could still fight. At this time, the two of them punched each other, depending on who was faster and fiercer. Their styles and methods were indeed quite similar. Han Fei's strength at this time was at the level of a junior venerable. Of course, he couldn't compare with Ren Tianfen. At most, he could exert the power of an intermediate venerable at most, and most of his moves were still stuck at the level of a beginner venerable. Han Fei was no longer able to increase his strength. Han Fei had a hunch that if he forcibly used his power of the Great Way, he wouldn't be able to have 4 times the strength. Otherwise, it would be too unbelievable. In the blink of an eye, Han Fei had been punched dozens of times. Every punch made Han Fei's internal organs tremble. It was really not a solution to go on like this. However, in terms of style, it was really Ren Tianfen's style. Roar! Han Fei roared and activated the 100 Beasts' soul-suppressing roar. A layer of golden light appeared on his body and enveloped him. "Hey, stinking brat. This time, I'll tell you that living a long life isn't without its benefits. In terms of the power of the divine soul, you can't be considered a top prodigy. At the same level, my soul power is about twice as strong as yours." Bang! Han Fei felt that his spirit was about to explode, and his eyes, nose, and mouth were bleeding. Han Fei gritted his teeth and grunted. With the help of the invincible will, golden fist marks smashed down like a storm. While bombarding, Han Fei asked, "The longer you live, the stronger your soul will be. How high can it go?" Ren Tianfei didn't give in at all. He fought back with his fists and punched out 7 or 8 big fist marks that were as powerful as the sacrificing punch, blowing Han Fei dozens of kilometers away. Ren Tianfei said, "That's not accurate. Not everyone could keep improving their divine soul power. In order to improve one's soul power, one needed to dig out one's own body's potential. The deeper one dug, the stronger the container of the divine soul would be. The other was to keep using the visualization diagram for a long time. The more advanced the visualization diagram is, the better the spiritual power can be improved, but there will be a limit." As he spoke, Han Fei had returned with a stellar passage technique. The two of them bombarded each other again. The two of them fought and blood splashed. But how much skill did they need? You might not be able to tell, but it was like 2 drunkards fighting each other. The two of them fought back and forth, and Han Fei lost more than he won. Han Fei said, "The second half of the indestructible body art should be to integrate the power of the soul into the body of flesh and blood. Merging the two is the ultimate way of the indestructible body art, isn't it?" Ren Tianfei laughed and said, "You're quite smart, kid. As you said, you've already comprehended the cultivation method of the indestructible body art. First of all, your body must be indestructible, and in fact, your soul must be indestructible. If you want your soul to be indestructible, the best way is to hide it in any corner of your body." Seizing the opportunity, Han Fei took Ren Tianfei's punch head-on. With a smile, he punched out and blew Ren Tianfei back 100 meters. Swallowing a mouthful of blood, Han Fei gasped. "Your method seems to have scattered my brain and integrated it into every corner of my body. Are you saying that my whole body is full of brains?" Ren Tianfei sneered. "I don't have time to talk nonsense with you. Your current physical strength is indeed not weak. Now that you've embarked on the invincible realm, you're even stronger. However, although your soul power may be about twice as much as ordinary people's, This part of the soul power can be made up for through persistent cultivation, visualization, and long-term cultivation. However, this part of the soul power can be made up for through persistent cultivation, visualization, and long-term cultivation. Therefore, anyone can do it. Therefore, the power of your divine soul is not the most top-notch kind. If you have a chance in the future, go find more ownerless souls. Bam! 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 Their fists collided and they both retreated thousands of meters. Han Fei took a breath and said, "The ownerless souls can be killed by venerables, but how strong is the soul?" Ren Tianfei said leisurely, "Everyone's limit is different. You shouldn't ask me about this. You should ask yourself. If you don't know how strong your soul power is now, it's not a big problem. In the future, find your Taoist heart. What is the great path in your heart? Where is your great path? How should you walk on it? The Taoist heart ultimately determines the limit of the soul." Han Fei's pupils suddenly constricted. This was the first time that he had heard someone else talk about the Taoist heart apart from the old turtle. In Han Fei's body, the old turtle said, "Han Fei, look, this is the difference. This old guy knows the meaning of the Taoist heart. You're the only one who's always chasing after increasing your strength. In fact, you are improving too fast. Even if you don't think about the Taoist heart now, when you become a venerable, do you want to become a king? If your Taoist heart is not strong enough, it won't work." Han Fei calmly asked Ren Tianfei, "What is the Taoist heart?" Ren Tianfei was accumulating power, and terrifying energy was gathering on his fists. The Taoist heart, the Taoist heart. There is nothing to worry about, and there is nothing to fear on the road ahead. Find your own meaning of life. Walk on the only great path that can let you walk until you die. Be firm and never give up. That is the Taoist heart. Hearing Ren Tianfei's explanation, Han Fei thought to himself. The old turtle couldn't help but say, "I have to say that you human beings are really eloquent. That's pretty much it, but you must not take what he said as the standard. What he said is all right. However, the Tao heart is far more complicated than these few sentences." After hearing Ren Tianfei's explanation and the old turtle's advice, Han Fei actually understood these truths. However, did he want Han Fei to have an unwavering Taoist heart now? Han Fei really couldn't do that for the time being. The key was that old Han and the others had paved the road for too long. Han Fei's own growth had been completely planned by them. Especially after he learned all this, he felt very upset and lost the sense of accomplishment he had before. However, it would be a lie to say that Han Fei didn't have any faith. Han Fei still had a lot of things to do. First of all, he had to find a way to cross the boundless sea, find the mermaids, beat up Chen Huangdian, and take Xia Shaochan away. Han Fei felt that his idea was very domineering. Chen Huangdian, that bastard, almost killed him back then. If he didn't get revenge, he wouldn't be able to get rid of the anger in his heart. As for the rest, was it really for the sake of the human race, for the sake of dealing with the Sea Clan? Han Fei really didn't. In war, there was no right or wrong. However, in their respective worlds, right and wrong always existed. Sea demons weren't ruthless, nor were human beings sentient. It could only be said that he happened to be born in the human race, so he had to stand on the side of the human race. No matter what kind of creatures they were, they would unite in times of crisis, which was a common trait. Even if this principle was correct, didn't the human race also have people like the aristocratic families? They were more concerned about their own interests. Did he want them to risk their lives for the survival of the human race? That was just wishful thinking. At this moment, Han Fei thought to himself that maybe he should study how to nurture his so-called faith after he became a venerable. Half a day later, Han Fei and Ren Tianfen fought more than 3,000 rounds. Most importantly, Han Fei was beaten up. Han Fei was lost for words. "Old bastard, I think you're just making fun of me. Why don't you lower your strength and let's practice again?" Ren Tianfen sneered. "What do you think? I just want to beat you up a few more times before you become a king. If you really become a king in the future, I'm a man who has beaten a king before." Han Fei's eyelids twitched. "So, you still don't think I can become a king, do you?" Ren Tianfen glanced at Han Fei in disdain. You haven't even become a venerable yet. Is it appropriate to talk about being a king? What do you think a king is? You think you can become one just because you want to? Even the king's tribulation is extremely difficult. By the way, with your cultivation speed, I'm afraid you'll have to consider the king's tribulation after you become a venerable. Han Fei smiled. You have no experience in this. What about the king's tribulation? I'm afraid there is only one person in the entire Yin-Yang heaven who has experience in it. Han Fei was talking about Tang Yen. Han Fei felt that this guy was very unusual. In order to transcend the king's tribulation, he created a cloud whale clone. However, this clone failed to transcend the king's tribulation and was killed. Now, he didn't give up and created another cloud whale clone. Not only did he create a cloud whale clone, but he also wanted to transcend the king's tribulation this time. Even if he failed this time, he still had the identity of Tang Han Fei side sincerely. In the world of the strong, it was really not easy to die. As the saying goes, a cunning rabbit has 3 burrows. These people were not kings yet, but they had already created one reincarnation after another for themselves. Even Han Fei himself knew how the so-called reincarnation came about. As Ren Tianfen said, he could directly deprive part of his soul power and all his memories, stuff the pure memories into a brand new body, and let it grow naturally. Under the influence of the environment, he would gradually become a new strong master. Just thinking about it made Han Fei's blood freeze. Did he watch himself become another person? Then, in the end, he became himself again. Ren Tianfen suddenly rose, shook his messy hair, and said casually, "Let's go to the temple and have a look. Be careful of the eye of the heavenly path. That thing can corrode the divine palace. Now, you can kill all the puppets in the divine palace." Chapter 1475. The central holy city was a place where kings lived. Under normal circumstances, that temple was empty. Everyone in the central holy city knew that. According to Oldman Ren, a long time ago, when it was most prosperous, the central holy city would be open to the 1,000-star city once a year. At that time, tens of millions of humans could come to the central holy city to admire the miracles. After crossing the heavenly river, there was a temple in the center that looked a bit like a temple of heaven. There were a lot of stairs in all directions, and the circular temple was quite large. It was also a 3-story building. Han Fei couldn't help but wonder, why are they all 3 stories? Ren Tianfen was stunned for a moment. What else are 3 stories? Han Fei shook his head. Nothing. I mean, is this where I'm going to live? Ren Tianfen sneered. You're going to live here? Why don't you take a look at yourself? Do you have the nerve to live here? Han Fei said in disdain, why would I have the nerve to live here? This is my territory after all. Ren Tianfen said proudly, the king's inheritance depends on who is capable. Everyone is paving the way for you, but you have to become a king first. Take Tang Yen for example. If he becomes a king before you and takes over the divine palace, this might be his. Han Fei looked at the sky and said, isn't that thing still there? How can Tang Yen become a king? Ren Tianfen shrugged. That's the truth. If it weren't for that thing, do you think anyone would wait for you to become a king? Besides, since that thing can stop others from becoming kings, it might be able to stop you too. You have to be prepared for that. Han Fei said casually, I'm not in a hurry. I haven't become a venerable yet, so I can keep that thing for a while. When I become a half-king, I'll find a way to get it. In a sense, the eye of the heavenly path bought time for Han Fei. If it weren't for the eye of the heavenly path, people like Old Monster Chu, Old Han, the Thug Patriarch, and Tang Yen wouldn't have been able to become kings. The 2 of them entered the temple. The bottom floor of the temple was nearly 100 meters high, and there was only a statue of the sea god. However, unlike all the sea god statues that Han Fei had seen, this sea god statue here was sitting very dignified and dignified. Also, in terms of demeanor and appearance, this was the first time that Han Fei had seen his mother when she was a king. The statue had shoulder-length hair that was slightly curled and fell to the back of its neck. The space between her eyebrows opened up, and a ray of golden light resembling a sword shot out. Her cheeks were slightly thin and angular, and she had the demeanor of an empress who ruled the world. Han Fei had seen his mother in the illusion of the sea-quelling painting before. However, at that time, she was just a beautiful woman, not a king at all. Ren Tianfei said, "Few people can make it here to pay their respects." Han Fei frowned and said, "King Cheng, isn't it just cultivation? Why do you insist on paying your respects?" Ren Tianfei smiled. "You don't understand. Back in that era, the myriad races didn't have much confidence. The king was their belief, their hope. They gave all their faith to the king. Can you understand this feeling? In this case, if the king can still show his divine skills from time to time for all people to admire, as time goes by, people will gain confidence." Han Fei asked, "How much power of faith do people need to admire?" Ren Tianfei nodded. "It's all mutual. The power of faith can help the king become stronger, and the king can enhance the confidence of all people. No one wins or loses here, but everyone makes a profit. The power of faith also has a limit. That's what your mother told me. What's the specific limit? I don't know. After all, not everyone can become a king." Han Fei and Ren Tianfei went to the second floor. As they walked, Han Fei asked, "Can't one become a king without the power of faith? If you really want to put it that way, then in this boundless sea region, there are tens of thousands of races, but only a few kings can appear, right?" Ren Tianfei said, "Of course not. There was a difference between King Cheng and King Cheng. Some people walked the righteous path of heaven and earth, walking the path of grandeur. Becoming a king is just a beginning, a beginning. Some people become a king only because they have enough strength and opportunities and have passed the king's tribulation. If you want to go further, then you have to continue to fight and look for opportunities." Han Fei wondered, "What's the difference?" Ren Tianfei said, "As the king of a clan, even if you sit and accept faith every day, you can eventually become a king. Do you know what it means to become a king? It's the realm after the king." Han Fei said, "I know. Are you saying I can become a king by sitting down?" Han Fei's heart trembled violently. Damn it, is there such a good thing in the world? It's already so difficult to become a king, but someone can become a king by sitting down? The old turtle's voice sounded in Han Fei's heart. How can there be such a good thing in the world? In fact, it's all the same. It's not so difficult to become a king, just because your domain is guarded by the Big Eye. Otherwise, there may have been more than one king by now. Even the old man in front of you can probably pass the king's tribulation. He said it's possible to become a king by sitting down. But think about it, how can a king who fights his way up be the same as a king who sits down? Han Fei felt that the old turtle had a point. Even if one could become a king by sitting down, it wouldn't be solid enough. That was a sovereign that was created from the power of will, so there was no reason for it to be stronger than the others who had fought their way up. However, the old turtle said again, "Of course, there are benefits too. Not everyone could break through the heavens and become an emperor after becoming a king. Besides, such a king who walks on the path of faith can gather the faith of thousands of people in his own territory, which is indeed impressive. However, if he leaves his territory, his strength may be greatly reduced." Han Fei pondered for a moment. So this was the reason why the Life Queen and the others refused to leave their territory? As they walked, Han Fei saw that the second floor was in a mess, and there were many wine jars rolling randomly on the ground. Ren Tianfei said, "What? I live on this floor. I don't have much to do. I just sleep, meditate, and so on. Let's go to the third floor. The entrance to the Divine Palace is on the third floor." Han Fei was amused. He didn't expect that Old Man Ren lived in the temple. Ren Tianfei seemed to know what Han Fei was thinking and immediately said, "I am a controller after all. Although my strength hasn't fully recovered, I was the strongest person below the king level in the past. It's not a problem for me to conquer the 1,000-star city alone." Han Fei glanced at him contemptuously. "Okay, I'll believe you. By the way, what's your injury? I have a great technique that might be able to cure you completely." Ren Tianfei grinned. "Forget it. It's just an apocalyptic divine technique. What you're walking on is not the apocalyptic divine technique. It's not as powerful as the real apocalyptic divine technique. You want to cure my injury as a semi-sovereign? That's just wishful thinking. When you reach the half-monarch realm, you might be able to use this technique to cure me. Since Ren Tianfei didn't ask for it, Han Fei wouldn't insist on it. Since Ren Tianfei thought that he hadn't walked on the apocalyptic divine technique, he would let him think that way for a while longer. When he became a venerable, he would be scared to death. On the third floor, Han Fei saw that the entire floor was surrounded by some golden lines. Obviously, this was a teleportation array. At least, judging from the level of the teleportation array, the complex golden patterns and the weird pattern structure, it should be much stronger than the one in the Shuemu heaven. The place where the immortal palaces were located was a place that ordinary people couldn't reach. It was hidden in space gaps and was difficult to find. Besides, among the immortal palaces, there were strong and weak ones. The Life Queen once said, yin and yang, colored glass, golden crow, dragon subduing. From her words, Han Fei felt that the level of the yin-yang heaven might not be low, or even very high. After all, when the Life Queen said this, she didn't say that they were not ranked first. Looking at the teleportation array, Ren Tianfei said, "This yin-yang palace is the last test for you. It's not that we don't have the ability to clean it, but if we clean it, we may pay a much greater price than you do. That thing is more lethal to us than it is to you. The stronger you are, the greater the threat you will face. Remember, if you don't have to use your full power, then don't. That thing is very blind." Han Fei was dumbfounded. "Why do I feel that that thing is alive?" Ren Tianfei smiled. "What do you think? It's not an exaggeration to say that it's alive. It's like an eye of the heavens, monitoring all living beings. But if something goes wrong, it will pop up and cause trouble." Han Fei asked one last question. "I've never understood why it only appeared in our yin-yang heaven. Why didn't it go to other places in the 36 immortal palaces?" Ren Tianfei looked at Han Fei weirdly. "That's your question. Do you think stealing time counts as going against the heavens?" Han Fei's lips twitched. "That makes sense. I've stolen a portion of the Age of Chaos and sealed it up. Did the heavenly way really not notice it at all? It's like I'm a king. If I find that someone steals from my place, will I still trust him?" Thinking of this, Han Fei couldn't help but smile bitterly. "Then can this thing be driven away?" Ren Tianfei shrugged. "I don't know. I'm just a controller, not a king. I can control the central holy city, but I can't control the immortal palaces. It's useless to ask me about this. You have to figure it out yourself." Han Fei smiled. "Okay, I'll go by myself." Han Fei quickly walked to the center of the array, and spiritual energy surged under him. In an instant, a large number of golden-veined patterns were activated. When the golden light flashed, the scene in front of Han Fei suddenly changed. What was even more surprising than the change in front of him was that Han Fei felt a terrifying temperature coming at him like an avalanche. But, oh my God! Chapter 1476. Han Fei couldn't believe the scene in front of him. Is this the legendary Immortal Palace? After seeing the Waterwood Immortal Palace, Han Fei felt that no one had entered the Yin-Yang Palace for such a long time. Maybe the spiritual energy there was a disaster, and the spiritual fruits had grown for tens of thousands of years. But now it seemed that this was not the case at all. In Han Fei's eyes, the flames were a disaster. As far as the eye could see, it was like hell, and there was lava everywhere. Although the spiritual energy here was indeed bursting, the spiritual energy here was extremely violent, as if there were spiritual energy explosions happening all the time. In the sky, there was a huge big eye, and a magma waterfall was flowing down from the eye. It looked as if he was crying tears of blood. In just an instant, the clothes on Han Fei's body had been burned to ashes. The terrifying temperature was even hotter than when Han Fei drilled through the mantle magma in the Waterwood heaven. Of course, at this moment, he had already reached the level of a semi-venerable. The indestructible golden body had also been completely shaped. Although the temperature was scorching, it couldn't hurt him at all. In these flames, Han Fei saw some figures. These figures were either lying, sitting, or lying on the ground. Han Fei could feel strong power from them. Puppets? Han Fei thought to himself. The old turtle said, Han Fei, this place doesn't look very good. Han Fei rolled his eyes. This isn't just fucking not good. It's simply breaking all the beautiful expectations in my heart. This place is simply a mess. The Immortal Palace is even more dangerous than hell. Originally, Han Fei was in high spirits, hoping to reap a bountiful harvest here. But now it seemed that not only couldn't he take back anything, but he also seemed to have to take out a lot of treasures. Huff! With a thought in Han Fei's mind, Little Black and Little White appeared beside him. These two little guys seemed to be taken aback. However, seeing that their master was here, they were immediately relieved. For the two of them, this terrifying temperature of the flames couldn't hurt them at all. It was just that Little White was a little unhappy. However, this time, Han Fei didn't put Little White into Forge the Universe. Instead, he said, "Daughter, take a breath of the violent spiritual energy here and eat as much as you can. Son, these terrifying flames belong to you now. Didn't you say that the scorching flame was lacking? This time you can eat your fill." Little Black and Little White's bodies began to expand. Then, both of them opened their mouths wide and began to swallow crazily. At this moment, Han Fei saw that the eyeball of the heavenly path magic eye in the sky seemed to move and glance in his direction. Han Fei took a deep breath. Ren Tianfei once said that other people had to pay a much greater price to become a king than he did. It must be because they were fighting against the eye of heaven's path. His cultivation was too low, so the difficulty that the heaven's path law I imposed on him wouldn't be too great. Now it was a complete mess. The entire Immortal Palace was filled with domineering flame essence, burning Han Fei's whole body. This meant that the challenge had come. Sure enough, Han Fei sensed that more and more puppets appeared in the flames. Although Little Black and Little White were already trying their best to swallow. However, the two of them were not strong enough. Even if they used all their strength, they could only form a vortex. And the rampaging energy, spiritual energy, and fire elements in the Yin-Yang Palace were too much. Swish, a puppet stepped out, holding a rusty long knife in its hand, and slashed at Han Fei. The might of this saber strike was filled with an extremely special power. It did not seem like the destructive power that an explorer could casually send out. Huff! Han Fei took a breath of energy and punched, ready to crush the figure together with the long saber. Han Fei didn't use his power of the Great Path. The reason was that the Eye of Heaven's Path was watching him. If he used a stronger power, would the Eye of Heaven's Path increase the difficulty? However, although it was not the sacrificing punch, Han Fei's punch was still unparalleled. Although Han Fei had crushed the long saber in the puppet's hand, this punch seemed to have hit an iron mountain. Although the puppet's body was distorted, it was not crushed. Wow, what a strong physique. The old turtle couldn't help but say, "These puppets have been tempered by this strong fire element all day long. I don't know how many tens of thousands of years they have been refined. Maybe their strength is not good, but I'm afraid none of them are weak in terms of physical strength." Gulp. Han Fei swallowed. I forgot to ask, how many puppets are there in the Immortal Palace? After seeing the Waterwood Immortal Palace, Han Fei felt that it was not big, only a few dozen kilometers long. At this moment, Han Fei's perception swept out, but he could only scan a kilometer away. Han Fei said, "Old Yuan, how big is this Immortal Palace? How many puppets are there?" Hardly had Han Fei asked the question when he saw a red laser coming at him from the Eye of the Heavenly Path in an instant. Han Fei didn't even have time to react. Who knew that the Eye of Heaven's Path would suddenly attack like this? Han Fei didn't even have time to step on the array and was hit hard by the blow. Han Fei rolled on the ground for thousands of meters away. His body was badly mutilated, his internal organs were rolling, and all his hair was burned. Even his bones were aching faintly. The old turtle said in horror, "No, it can feel my power. As soon as my soul power probed, it was all obliterated. It even intended to destroy me directly." Han Fei was shocked. This is too fucking much. Does it mean that the old turtle can't attack? Swish, swished with a thought, Han Fei directly stored Little Black and Little White into Forge the Universe at the same time. Because those puppets began to move. If these puppets were easy to deal with, Little Black and Little White would be fine. But now it seemed that none of the puppets here were easy to deal with. With so many terrifying forces, who can resist them on the sea demon battlefield? Han Fei was speechless. These puppets were now attacking crazily. For a time, spears were like dragons, knives were shining, and swords were slashing at Han Fei. Clank, clank, clank. After setting up a defensive array for himself, Han Fei tried to control these puppets with the void lines. However, when the void lines buckled these puppets, Han Fei immediately saw a big bleeding eye, which seemed to be the eye of Heaven's path. Puff! At that moment, Han Fei bled from his eyes, nose, and mouth. The blood instantly evaporated in the flames, and then was sucked back by Han Fei along with its energy. Han Fei was horrified. It's over. All the puppets here are finished. They either didn't have souls or were ownerless residual souls, retaining some instinctive consciousness. But now it seemed that these souls had all been contaminated by the eye of Heaven's path, and none of them could be saved. Oh! Under the 100 Beasts' soul-suppressing roar, the 3 puppets around Han Fei seemed to have their souls shattered and collapsed. Seeing this, Han Fei was overjoyed. Yes, he could attack with his soul. Even if he could crush these puppets, it wouldn't do him any good. But if he destroyed their souls, then their puppet bodies could still be used. For example, the soul-splitting technique was the most basic control method. If he separated a wisp of his soul, these puppets would be under his control. Of course, the only disadvantage of this method was that he would have to divide a lot of his soul power. Divine Stab. Fortunately, the God-scaring painting had been completed, and the God-scaring stab had been completely transformed into the Divine Stab. It was just that he wasn't proficient in it yet. After all, Han Fei hadn't used it recently. Now he could use it to deal with these guys. A puppet without a soul was just a puppet. Therefore, with a thought, Han Fei collected the 3 puppets into Forge the Universe just like collecting an item. However, Han Fei didn't feel happy for long. Although he had enough strength to kill the corroded souls of these puppets. However, there were too many puppets here. No matter how strong Han Fei was, he didn't use the power of the Great Path, so he only had a strong physique. And these puppets in front of him, in terms of physique alone, almost all exceeded half a venerable being. Thousands of puppets attacked at the same time. No matter how strong Han Fei was, he could only run around the Divine Palace and fight while running. If he had to fight head-on, Han Fei would be hammered unconscious by these puppets at most 10 minutes. Oh! Han Fei's soul attack methods were limited after all. In addition to the 100 Beasts' soul-suppressing roar, he could only use the Divine Stab. The void lines could deal with the enemy, but against the Eye of the Great Path, he would be injured first. At this time, he couldn't use it at all. The old turtle was in Han Fei's body, so he said leisurely, "Maybe your strength is too low. This should just be the instinctive defense mechanism of the Eye of the Great Path. So, it shouldn't be difficult for you to subdue these puppets." Han Fei said, "I'm afraid that some of these puppets have developed their own consciousness in the past tens of thousands of years." Han Fei remembered the example of the water fairy. If there were venerable realm puppets, it would be hard to defeat them. The old turtle said, "I don't think so. The Eye of the Great Path is here. Do you think it can tolerate the birth of a new consciousness? Even if it is born, I'm afraid it will be immediately obliterated. That's why I said it's not difficult to subdue these puppets. It'll just take a little more time. A few days will be enough." Han Fei sneered. A few days? Now, the number of puppets that appeared in his perception had exceeded 1,000. Even in the Shuemu sky, this power was an incomparably powerful force. The fierce battle continued, and the interior of the Yin-Yang Palace was riddled with holes. However, as Han Fei ran, he found that something was wrong. He seemed to have run to the center of the Divine Palace. He saw a large palace quietly standing amidst the dense fire elemental energy. This palace is sealed? Even the Eye of the Great Path can't break the seal? Chapter 1477. Han Fei was wondering if there was a palace in this place that was not polluted by the eye of the heavenly path. Presumably, this palace was probably left to him by his mother. So, without hesitation, Han Fei bumped into the seal of the palace. Generally speaking, this kind of seal should be able to distinguish the aura of the intruder. In fact, Han Fei was not sure. However, a seal was not enough to eat him. So, without the slightest hesitation, Han Fei bumped into it. Han Fei felt that he had bumped into an iron mountain, and his whole body was almost flattened. However, the seal did not weaken at all, nor could he get in easily. A lot of bombardment followed. With a flash, Han Fei appeared 1,000 meters away and circled around the palace. However, to Han Fei's disappointment, there was no entrance or exit on this seal. He had tried 5, 6, 7, 8 times, but not once had he managed to enter. Han Fei even flew to the top to take a look. However, he still didn't find any entrance. The old turtle said, "Maybe the way you entered is wrong. After all, this used to be the residence of a king. You are still far from becoming a king. Even if many people think you can become a king, you are not one now. It's normal that the seal doesn't recognize you. If you have the strength, you might as well kill those puppets first. It seems that this is not a job that ordinary people can do. Fortunately, I didn't come until now. If I came earlier, I would have been beaten to death by these puppets. Oh no, even if a junior venerable came, I am afraid that they would also die. Their physiques are not as strong as these puppets." 3 days later, Han Fei activated the war body technique and swallowed the souls of more than 1,300 puppets in these 3 days. Han Fei was very impatient. In the past 3 days, he was simply a fighting machine, and his mental state was extremely exhausted. The spiritual fruits in Forge the Universe had been consumed by him. If these puppets were just ordinary demi-venerables, it would be fine. However, what were these things? These were all mindless machines, unkillable cockroaches. Other than using mental attacks to deal with them one by one. If he were to rely on absolute strength to fight them, he would have been crippled long ago. However, it was fortunate that these were puppets. If he wasn't a puppet but a conscious person, he would have been slaughtered long ago. The Immortal Palace did not occupy a large area, it should only be about the same size as the Waterwood Immortal Palace. A total of 1,302 puppets were wiped out by Han Fei. Bang! Han Fei lay on the ground and gasped for air. With a thought, Little Black and Little White appeared. Han Fei said, "Son, daughter, swallow it slowly and carefully. Swallow the spiritual energy and energy of this damn place clean." Han Fei cleaned up these puppets. The Eye of Heaven's path didn't do anything out of the ordinary either. Perhaps in the eyes of the heavenly Tao Dharma Eye, these puppets were just small fries. Perhaps they were like ants on the ground. If they were gone, then so be it. They were not worth paying attention to. And the strength that Han Fei showed was only that of a semi-venerable, which had nothing to do with the strength of a king. Therefore, the big eyeball did nothing except glancing at Han Fei occasionally. After the battle, the endless and violent spiritual energy began to spontaneously pour into Han Fei's body. After all, Han Fei had transcended the mortal meridians, so spiritual energy and energy would automatically drill into his body. Even if Han Fei didn't do anything but just lay down, his body would be filled with spiritual energy in half an hour at most. Fortunately, Little Black and Little White, one on the left and one on the right, were swallowing frantically. Whoosh! Han Fei had just laid down for less than a quarter of an hour, and the bodies of Little Black and Little White began to tremble slightly. Han Fei was stunned. Little Black and Little White couldn't go any further. If they went any further, they would have to go through a tribulation. Han Fei didn't know how these two little guys were going to go through the tribulation. For a long time, Han Fei had forgotten to ask this question. Did the tribulation of spiritual beasts have anything to do with their masters? At this moment, information emerged in Han Fei's eyes. Named Twin Yin-Yang Spirit Swallowing Fish, Evolving. Introduction. This is the descendant of the mysterious Yin-Yang Sky-Swallowing Fish from ancient times. The black and white fishes are born together. The white fish is docile while the black fish is cruel. They are symbiotic. As long as one is alive, the other will not die. Level 69. Quality: mysterious, stores spiritual energy, evolving, food, omnivorous, can swallow anything, battle skills, supreme yin-yang wheel, spirit devouring body, fusion, Gemini divine technique. Note: the black fish cannot be seen. Except for the owner, only those with the yin-yang divine eyes born by heaven and earth can see through it. After fusing, their battle prowess would increase greatly, comparable to a divine weapon. Contained soul power, evolving. Han Fei's heart trembled. Are little black and little white going to transcend their tribulation? Wait, is it really okay to undergo tribulation in this godforsaken place? Han Fei quickly said, Old Yuan, will there be any accidents when my naturally endowed spiritual beast transcends the tribulation under the gaze of the eye of the heavenly path? Han Fei had no experience in this regard. I wonder what this heavenly Tao Dharma eye is? Who knew what it was trying to monitor? It's weird that it keeps looking at people like this. The old turtle said leisurely, How does a connate Taoist aptitude body transcend the tribulation? I don't know either. They are Taoist aptitude bodies, so it's the same whether they transcend the tribulation or not. Because they are the embodiment of the way of heaven, they are a part of the way of heaven. If they transcend the tribulation, I always feel that the way of heaven is transcending itself. Han Fei? Han Fei was dumbfounded. So? The old turtle said grumpily, I'm not omnipotent. I'm a turtle, and I spend most of my time sleeping. Besides, the world is so big, and there's a limit to what I know. If a naturally endowed spiritual beast needs to transcend a tribulation, the owner should be able to replace it. Because you are in a symbiotic relationship. If your naturally endowed spiritual beast dies, it will greatly damage your foundation. If the owner dies, the naturally endowed spiritual beast will also die. So, according to my experience, it should be replaceable. Hearing this, Han Fei immediately breathed a sigh of relief. As long as it could be replaced. The real strength of Little Black and Little White hadn't reached the level of explorers yet. If there was a tribulation that they couldn't guard against, they would have to face it themselves. Seeing that the eye of heaven didn't respond to him, Han Fei continued to lie for a while. 1 hour later. At this time, Little Black and Little White had completely stopped devouring spiritual energy and fire energy. The amount they had devoured so far might not even be 1% of the energy and fire energy escaping from the entire yin-yang fairy palace. But Han Fei didn't panic at all. Just now, he asked Little Black and Little White to devour spiritual energy to provide them with enough energy. More importantly, he needed to rest. After 3 days of crazy fighting, his body had been hammered thousands of times, and his bones were almost broken. He could already be considered inhuman to be able to kill 1,302 puppets. At this moment, Han Fei felt that he hadn't fully recovered and wanted to continue to lie for a while. However, the bodies of Little Black and Little White suddenly began to flicker. From the looks of it, was he really going to advance? Han Fei was a little stunned. Is what the old turtle said true? A connate Taoist aptitude body doesn't need to transcend a tribulation? Bada. Suddenly, Han Fei raised his head, only to see that in the distant sky, the eye of heaven's path blinked. In the eye of heaven, there was a vortex of flames. He didn't know if it was triggered by the breakthrough of Little Black and Little White. Han Fei's heart skipped a beat. He wondered if he should put Little Black and Little White away. He could make a breakthrough at any time. He should be able to make a breakthrough in the Soul Sea. However, what if the eye of heaven's path noticed him? It felt weird. The old turtle said, Don't panic. There must be a condition for the big eye to be triggered. You cleaned up so many puppets with your strength of half a venerable, but it didn't attack you. It's very likely that it won't attack anyone below the venerable level. Han Fei remembered that Ren Tianfei, the old bastard, also said that the less power you used, the less the eye of heaven's path would notice you. However, Han Fei had already stood up. Once the eye of heaven's path moved, he would immediately put Little Black and Little White away. He could also enter Forge the Universe for a while. However, after several minutes, the Eye of Heaven's path didn't move. Han Fei heaved a sigh of relief. It seemed that this thing wouldn't attack anyone below the venerable level. 1 hour, 2 hours. After another 6 hours, Han Fei saw light flickering on Little Black and Little White, and information appeared in his eyes again. Named Twin Yin-Yang Spirit Swallowing Fish Introduction. This is a descendant of the mysterious ancient Yin-Yang Sky Swallowing Fish. The black and white fish are born together. The white fish is docile, and the black fish is brutal. They are symbiotic. As long as one of them survives, the other won't die. Level 70 Quality, Mysterious, Storage of Chaotic Aura, 1 strand, Food, Everything can be swallowed, Combat Skills, Supreme Yin-Yang Wheel, Spirit Swallowing Body, Fusion, Gemini Divine Technique, Soul Power Fusion, 1 hour, Remarks, the black fish is invisible. Except for the Master, only the Yin-Yang Divine Eyes born by heaven and earth can see through it. After fusion, its combat power will be greatly increased, and it will be comparable to a divine weapon. Han Fei had already guessed that Little Black and Little White were making a breakthrough. Although Han Fei felt it was quite amazing that they didn't go through a tribulation. However, Little Black and Little White were mysterious creatures, and they had the connate Taoist figure. It seemed reasonable for this to happen to them. However, when Han Fei saw that the storage of spiritual energy turned into the storage of chaotic aura, he immediately felt shocked. For a long time, Han Fei had no way to obtain chaotic aura. He didn't even know what chaotic aura was. However, now Little Black and Little White actually produced chaotic aura 1 step ahead of him. Except that the storage of spiritual energy turned into chaotic aura. After this breakthrough, the soul power numbers of Little Black and Little White also disappeared and were replaced by the exact fusion time. The soul power represented the length of time the Master had fused with his spiritual beast. In the past, when Han Fei fused with Little Black and Little White, this time was calculated. Less than 2 hours had passed. Once this critical value was exceeded, Han Fei would feel that his spirit would become weak. The Gemini Divine Technique was a kind of wonderful technique that could even make his body disappear, so it didn't count. But if it was just a simple fusion, it used to take up to 1 hour at most, but now it had doubled. This was too touching for Han Fei. First update. Asking for votes. End of this chapter. That you're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.